Chapter 1048. Quiet, deep, focused and peaceful. His consciousness spread endlessly and his body relaxed as much as possible. It was indescribable comfort and tranquility. Li Tianlan had never thought that he would get to this point so quickly. What did it mean to enter the invincible realm? Li Tianlan himself couldn't figure it out for a while. Both his body and will were perfect, but because there were too many perfections, he formed an imperfection that was difficult to be compatible with. Li Tianlan already had some clues to solve this problem, but it would take time. In his expectation, it would take at least 3 to 5 years for him to have enough confidence to explore slowly when he officially entered the invincible realm. But now, unimaginable energy completely filled his body, constantly repairing it. In meditation, Li Tianlan could even clearly feel the slightest changes in his body. Every drop of blood became hot, every muscle became more energetic and every cell became more active and then continued to divide. Great power kept brewing in his body, the dual wind and thunder veins in his body became more and more resilient, and the strength of his body was increasing all the time. The constantly increasing strength of his body made his strength and speed reach the most perfect state of balance. His blood was roaring in his body, and Li Tianlan felt that his body was like a volcano that would erupt at any time, with unimaginable vitality and enough power to destroy everything. His constantly spreading consciousness became more and more sober, and his perception became clearer and clearer. The acuity of his body seemed to suddenly increase countless times. The most intuitive feeling was pain. It was a sharp pain with a little comfort. It was so contradictory but so clear. The changes inside his body continued. The extremely severe pain, accompanied by a strong sense of suffocation, enveloped Li Tianlan and swallowed all his reason. In the luxurious bedroom, no one disturbed his crucial meditation. Li Tianlan sat on the bed, his body trembling violently in pain. Big drops of cold sweat flowed from all over his body along with black dirt. It was the impurities hidden in the deepest part of his body and the blood left in his body after many serious injuries. The black dirt covered his whole body in the blink of an eye, and the inexplicable pain still continued, spreading all over his body. It was as if every muscle in his body was vibrating and every tendon was twisting crazily. Hot blood was rushing through his body like boiling magma, spreading all over his limbs. Li Tianlan gritted his teeth and closed his eyes to endure it. The breakthrough this time was obviously unusual. The originally long process was compressed countless times under the stimulation of huge energy. Even Li Tianlan found it a little hard to bear when it suddenly broke out. The pain continued and became more and more intense. The muscles and tendons all over his body were twisting as if they were trying their best to achieve the desired state. The blood that looked like eyes flowed through his limbs, into his chest and abdomen, and gathered crazily towards his heart. All the pain seemed to disappear in an instant. Li Tianlan suddenly opened his eyes and fell on the bed in an extremely embarrassing manner. His body twitched wildly and his expression, which had been trying hard to endure, twisted to the extreme in an instant. An unimaginable itch suddenly broke out from his chest. Li Tianlan had suffered a lot since he was a child that he shouldn't have suffered at his age. His will was tough enough, but the itch that broke out in an instant directly and completely destroyed all his will without warning. It was like a real heart-wrenching pain. His chest seemed to be completely torn open. Every microsecond when the blood rolled in his chest, the tide-like itch was destroying his will. Li Tianlan fell on the bed, his body trembling. He opened his eyes wide and gasped for breath. For a moment, it seemed that all the blood in his body had poured into his chest, and the itch that was enough to drive people completely crazy was spreading in his chest bit by bit. The other parts of his body seemed to have completely lost feeling. Huge energy was in his body. His body was still surging. All the blood poured into his chest. Then in a very short time, new blood began to burst out from every corner of Li Tianlan's body again, and the extremely hot and almost boiling blood continued to surge toward his chest. The blood in his body was completely sucked out by his chest and it was sucked out again and again. If the human body was a container, then the blood in the container obviously had a limit. But after countless blood poured into his chest, it was constantly compressed. The infinite energy stimulated Li Tianlan's body to constantly produce blood. The moment the blood appeared in his body, it began to gather in his chest again and again. Li Tianlan's weight kept increasing. In the roar, the huge, soft and luxurious bed under Li Tianlan collapsed directly. There was more and more blood in his body, almost endless. The blood that was constantly compressed in his chest gradually spread to the right atrium little by little, and it was constantly becoming solid. Bang! The sound of a vigorous heartbeat rang out from the bedroom without any warning. The collapsed bed shook slightly. The heartbeat was getting stronger and stronger. Bang! The whole bedroom was shaking slightly with the heartbeat. Bang! The huge heartbeat kept shaking gently and rhythmically. Li Tianlan opened his eyes wide. His consciousness had long been in a trance and he didn't even know where he was or what he was doing. The will that was broken by the itch was hard to reorganize. In a trance, Li Tianlan saw fragments of his life one after another. That was the purest martial arts. He picked up the sword blade for the first time. He punched for the first time. His body rose into the air for the first time. He meditated for the first time. He entered the chi-controlling realm for the first time. He broke through to the thunder-shocking realm for the first time in a fierce battle. He recultivated for the first time. He killed for the first time. He destroyed for the first time. Yes, destroyed. Countless pictures flashed in Li Tianlan's widened eyes. His pupils were slightly unfocused and all the rotating pictures were slightly frozen in an instant. In the picture it was Li Tianlan who was only 7 or 8 years old. His clothes were thin and he had no weapon in his hand. His eyes were so determined. He punched, rushed forward and attacked. All the movements were frozen at that moment. The world seemed to freeze. His fist fell on a thick tree in front of him. In the frozen picture the young Li Tianlan was motionless. However, the tree was falling apart bit by bit at an extremely slow speed as if it was moving in slow motion. The trunk was tearing and disintegrating, the leaves were flying and the smoke and dust were all over the sky. Tearing, destroying and destroying. The extremely loud heartbeat was getting clearer and clearer, and it even rushed out of the bedroom and echoed in the corridor on the top floor of Emperor Dong's palace. Li Tianlan's eyes were empty. The frozen picture continued to turn. Next there were swords after swords, countless sword lights. It was the 24 moves of sword, his own kendo and the foundation of all his martial arts. His kendo had long been perfect. But what was the meaning of the so-called perfection of a flawless kendo? Tearing, destroying and destroying. The foundation of his dance was collapsing at an unprecedented speed, being torn apart, destroyed and destroyed. There was nothing left. This seemed to be everything he had been pursuing. What he pursued was not martial arts, but the kind that could tear everything and destroy everything. What was it? Li Tianlan suddenly found that he couldn't find a suitable adjective in his days. What could tear everything? What could destroy everything? Martial arts? Oh, it was not martial arts. Realm? Oh, it was not realm either. Then what was it? Li Tianlan's consciousness was constantly in a trance and he became a little anxious. What could tear everything? What? A word that seemed very familiar to him but also very strange to him was hovering on the edge of his consciousness, but he couldn't think of it. His martial arts foundation was completely destroyed. But now he was stronger than ever before. He didn't need martial arts, realm or even weapons. He didn't need anything but he could destroy everything. It wasn't that he needed anything. He didn't know what state he was in now but he could tear something if he wanted to. Yes, it was not martial arts or realm. He couldn't think of what it was. He just could do it. All martial arts and sword lights were torn apart bit by bit. The itch began to weaken gradually. The blood that was compressed again and again in his body had been compressed into a substance, and it was slowly gathering in the right atrium. The huge energy was gradually consumed, and the energy in Li Tianlan's body finally turned into blood that filled his limbs, and then disappeared completely. The last drop of solid blood in his chest gathered in the right atrium and turned into a small mass. A film-like substance covered the small mass of blood. The blood trembled slightly. The heartbeat continued, and the sound resounded over Emperor Dong's palace. Li Tianlan's consciousness gradually returned. His eyes were empty. It was like everything had returned to the beginning. The original end and also the final starting point. What's going on? The extremely stable heartbeat was getting louder and louder like thunder, almost covering the entire sky over Emperor Dong's palace. More and more people walked out of the castle and looked up at the direction of the top floor of the castle on the fountain square in front of the castle gate. The violent heartbeat kept beating. Qin Weibai stood at the forefront of the crowd and whispered to herself. Good thing. Xianyuan Wushang smiled and his eyes became more and more friendly and peaceful. From now on, Big Brother is on the most correct path, a path that belongs to him. Everything has just begun. Just begun? Qin Weibai turned her head and looked at Xianyuan Wushang. After the breakthrough, Li Tianlan was already in the invincible realm. Before he broke through, he was already the top one in the dark world. How terrifying Li Tianlan was now was absolutely beyond imagination. All this was just the beginning? This is close to the starting point. Xianyuan Wushang whispered, it's also close to the end. He suddenly smiled and whispered, listen to the heartbeat. Bang. The heartbeat was beating. Qin Weibai was about to say something. Bang. Another heartbeat that was completely different from the previous one rang out. In the huge bedroom, Li Tianlan lay on the bed. The constantly vibrating blood in the right atrium seemed to have gathered enough power with incomparably strong vitality. It stopped trembling for a moment and then slightly pulsed. Boom. It was like a real thunder. All the windows in the entire Emperor Dong's palace were completely shattered in an instant under the heartbeat. The huge heartbeat, with incomparably majestic power, swept through the entire Emperor Dong's palace in an instant like a storm. Glass shards filled the sky and danced in the air. In the chaotic crowd, Xianyuan Wushang quietly raised his head and smiled. His body was extremely relaxed and he smiled gently, saying, welcome back. Chapter 1049. The sudden and huge sound waves swept through the entire Emperor Dong's palace in an instant. Countless pieces of glass shattered under the impact of the sound waves. They flew into the sky and fell quickly. The bright sunlight shone on the pieces of glass. Countless rays of light refracted and were colorful. The whole world seemed to become extremely illusory at this moment. The huge heartbeat was still beating and the frequency was gradually increasing. The huge sound waves disappeared, but the beating heartbeat became more and more obvious. It was hard to describe the first heartbeat. It was like a heart that had been silent for countless years and finally regained its vitality after almost an eternity. It slowly pulsed for the first time and then endless vitality began to recover. The heartbeat beat again and again. At this moment, the heartbeat of everyone in Emperor Dong's palace was beating in sync with the heartbeat that had just recovered. The speed of the heartbeat was too slow. In just a few seconds, most people's faces were already pale. Fortunately, the recovery of the heartbeat was also speeding up. About 10 seconds later, the extremely slow heartbeat finally returned to a normal level. Then the heartbeat that everyone could hear completely disappeared. Qin Weibai breathed a sigh of relief and put down her hand that was pressed against her chest. Her face was pale, but her eyes were extremely calm when she looked at Xianyuan Wushang. She didn't know what was going on, but all the signs showed that Xianyuan Wushang knew what was going on. It's okay. Xianyuan Wushang felt Qin Weibai's gaze. He turned to look at her and said with a smile, Big Brother broke through and it was a very successful breakthrough. Everything was very smooth and there was no deviation at all. It was the most incredible breakthrough. Incredible? Qin Weibai frowned. You said it's incredible that Tianlan broke through and entered the invincible realm? It's very common to break through and enter the so-called invincible realm, but this time it's not so simple. Xianyuan Wushang smiled and said, I'm a doctor. Qin Weibai subconsciously curled her lips. She might have always been a quiet and cold goddess and she might have a very feminine side, but that was a scenery that only Li Tianlan could see. Now she curled her lips, which was really rare. Everyone around who saw this scene felt dizzy. Xianyuan Wushang was also stunned. He wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. Go on. Qin Weibai said. She didn't know if it was true that Xianyuan Wushang was a doctor, but even if it was true, this so-called doctor was completely different from ordinary doctors. I told you I'm a doctor. Xianyuan Wushang smiled bitterly and said, that's why I'm very sensitive to the changes in life force. The most important thing about this breakthrough isn't that Big Brother's strength has become stronger. To be exact, it's that his life level has changed with this breakthrough. Based on the current scientific level, we can understand this as evolution. Although it's not actually the case, the word evolution is the closest to Big Brother's current situation. Qin Weibai was lost in thought and did not speak for a while. Xianyuan Wushang smiled and continued, let's go see him. He's just made a breakthrough, so it's inevitable that he's not used to it yet. He'll need to adapt to many things in the coming days. Yes. Qin Weibai nodded subconsciously and trotted to the entrance of the castle without hesitation. Xianyuan Wushang stood in place, his head lowered as he thought about something. He didn't say anything for a while. Young master. A deep and heavy voice suddenly rang out. Xianyuan Wushang's body was suddenly shrouded by a shadow. Xing Tian appeared beside him and looked down at him. Xianyuan Wushang raised his eyebrows slightly and said, "Why are you back so soon? Did you suffer a loss?" Originally he had asked Xing Tian to entertain Lin Shi who had just arrived. Apart from anything else, it was necessary to show the 11th prince of the war god realm his power and let him understand whose territory he was in. But Xing Tian had returned so soon and Li Tianlong was here. Would Lin Shi dare to attack Xing Tian? No. Xing Tian shook his head and said, "I didn't find him." Xianyuan Wushang's chubby face showed an expression that said, "You're kidding me," and said, "You said you didn't find him?" He asked in disbelief. The natives of Miracle City didn't notice Lin Shi's arrival, but how could he and Xing Tian not notice it? Not finding him under such circumstances was like a person with excellent eyesight looking at the light in front of him in the dark and saying that he couldn't see the light. You couldn't find him? Or you didn't dare to go? Coward. Why are you acting like a coward? What are you doing? Xianyuan Wushang lowered his voice and said, gnashing his teeth. Oh. Xing Tian explained in a low, muffled voice, "I'm lost." Xianyuan Wushang was furious. "You're lost, you're King lost," Xing Tian's voice continued. "I should have entered the Qingqing territory and been deceived." You. Xianyuan Wushang's voice was suddenly stuck in his throat and he coughed violently. Qingqing territory? His face turned red and he looked at Xing Tian to confirm. Yes. Xing Tian nodded. Qingqing territory was a symbolic deception area. The whole time corridor was focused on Feng Qinggu. Xing Tian entered the Qingqing territory, which meant Lin Shi should have been warned. Even if Feng Qinggu is not in Miracle City, her eyes are obviously on Miracle City now. Xing Tian said in a low voice. Xianyuan Wushang was stunned for a while and shook his head. He wanted to say something but didn't dare to. Feng Qinggu, Lin Shi. Tut tut. Xianyuan Wushang couldn't help but say, "Is it necessary? How much hatred do you have?" Princess Royal Feng Qinggu, who was good at deception, didn't have an obvious advantage when facing the peak experts of Order and Shadow compared to the other neutral peak experts. Because she wasn't good at one-on-one combat, she was at a disadvantage when facing some special individuals. This wasn't an area that was good at one-on-one combat, but it was an area that was extremely good at head-on combat. It seemed that Feng Qinggu was the only one who had reached the peak of this field in the entire time corridor. As for the Human Emperor Palace and the War God Realm, there was no one. The Time Corridor and the Human Emperor Palace of the War God Realm were unlikely to have any interaction, but they would eventually have contact. To be precise, the existence of Feng Qinggu was a super killer weapon to deter the human race. But this killer weapon took the initiative to show Lin Shi his power. He didn't know if the 11th prince was scared out of his wits. Should he go and comfort him and express the great humanist concern of the space-time corridor? Tisk, it's so difficult. Xianyuan Wushang scratched his head and laughed awkwardly. Xing Tian glanced at him and then looked away. He naturally knew why. It was said that when Xianyuan Wushang entered the War God realm for the first time, he had been shown his power. Perhaps this scene made the 9th prince feel like he had vented his anger? Xing Tian thought silently. 1 second later, his huge body suddenly shook, and he suddenly looked up at the sky of Emperor Dong's palace. Xianyuan Wushang had turned around a second earlier than Xing Tian. Their eyes were focused on the gate of Emperor Dong's palace at the same time. Silently, a blurry figure stepped on the gate of Emperor Dong's palace, looking at the magnificent castle in the sun. Xianyuan Wushang and Xing Tian saw him. Obviously, he also saw Xianyuan Wushang and Xing Tian. It seemed that he didn't expect someone to find him. He raised his eyebrows in surprise and whispered to himself, "Interesting." His voice, which sounded like he was talking to himself, spread through the whole Emperor Dong's palace. Wang Xingxiao's voice was a little playful. "How did you find me?" With the Chosen One's sword energy and the sword energy coat formed by Worryless. Although Wang Xingxiao was not in the invincible realm, the resonance of the sword energy of the same origin allowed him to exert strength close to Wang Tianzong's. He had every reason to believe that in the whole Emperor Dong's palace, even if he stood in front of Situ Songyuan's saint, they could not find him. But now, this inexplicable fatty? The silly big guy? Wang Xingxiao was a little confused. Who are these two people? The information of the Wang family of Beihai was completely blank. Wang Xingxiao, Xianyuan Wushang frowned tightly. His eyes stayed on the sword energy coat beside Wang Xingxiao for a long time. What are you doing here? Unconsciously, Xianyuan Wushang's voice had become extremely serious. It was not an excuse or a joke that he could not fight here. Although it was not absolute, it was also a fact. His profession was a doctor. Miracle City was a real environment and his combat capability would be compressed to the extreme. The remaining combat capability, even if he exerted all his strength, was at most at the level of the invincible realm. Moreover, he was not at the peak of the invincible realm, but at the level of the fake invincible realm who barely broke through to the invincible realm and was not even qualified to be on the divine and holy lists. If he really exerted all his strength, Xianyuan Wushang could do it, but the consequences were not what he was willing to bear. But no. Wang Xingxiao was surrounded by sword energy, and his aura was so strong that it had even surpassed that of Li Tianlan before the breakthrough. Worryless energy was perfectly blending with Wang Tianzong's sword energy. In this state, Wang Xingxiao could absolutely be said to be one of the most terrifying experts in the dark world or even the best. Xianyuan Wushang's combat capability was really like an ant. The other party's appearance here suddenly gave off a feeling that he was not friendly. He subconsciously glanced at Xing Tian beside him. Xing Tian silently took a step forward and stood in front of Xianyuan Wushang. Where is Li Tianlan? Wang Xingxiao suddenly asked. Absolute power gave him enough confidence. His entire spirit, qi and spirit were completely different from the day before. His tone of voice also changed slightly. Let him come see me. Xianyuan Wushang tilted his head slightly and asked in confusion, do you have any misunderstanding about your identity? You want to challenge my big brother now that you have some strength? Your big brother? Li Tianlan? Wang Xingxiao was stunned and then he laughed. Don't get me wrong, I don't mean to challenge him. I just want to borrow something from Emperor Dong's palace. His voice spread around Emperor Dong's palace, bringing waves of echoes. What thing? Xianyuan Wushang's voice was a little cold. Xianyuan Feng. Wang Xingxiao's tone was calm and firm as if he was making a declaration. I suddenly find that the Wang family of Beihai is more suitable to have Xianyuan Feng than Emperor Dong's palace. Chapter 1050. Wang Xingxiao didn't stay idle at all. His trip to take Xianyuan Feng definitely touched Li Tianlan's sore spot. He wasn't very clear about Li Tianlan's state and everything was just speculation. With his current combat capability, he didn't need to be afraid of anything. But Emperor Dong's palace was Li Tianlan's territory after all. If he delayed, things might change. Countless words had been echoing in his mind as soon as he entered Tianan. Wang Xingxiao didn't want any accidents. He just took the things and left. That was the only thing he wanted to do. So although he stood motionless on the gate of Emperor Dong's palace, countless sword energy had densely covered every corner of Emperor Dong's palace. The sword energy shuttled and explored, looking for Xianyuan Feng, which had no energy and looked like a piece of ordinary iron. It was not easy, but now Wang Xingxiao's sword energy was so abundant that he could use it unscrupulously and support him in countless battles. Therefore, there was more and more sword energy around him and the search became more and more detailed. The sword energy swept over the square of Emperor Dong's palace and was about to rush into the castle. Xing Tian, who was tall and burly like a giant, made people think that he was born with divine power, suddenly took a step forward. Wang Xingxiao's eyebrows twitched slightly for a moment. There was no information about Xianyuan Wushang and Xing Tian in the Wang family of Beihai's information. But judging from where they stood in the crowd, their identities were obviously not trivial. They stood in front of everyone. This position might not mean everything, but at least it meant that their status in Emperor Dong's palace was not low at all. But the Wang family of Beihai didn't notice it? Wang Xingxiao didn't know what it meant. When facing these two people, he was instinctively vigilant. In his sight, Xing Tian suddenly stretched out his palm. His palm was as big and thick as his body. Wang Xingxiao's spirit tightened for a moment. But the expected attack didn't come. In his sight, the wide palm grasped the air and suddenly pulled. With Xing Tian as the center, the space within several meters suddenly twisted and deformed. A large amount of invisible and vast sword energy in Emperor Dong's palace suddenly stopped when it was about to rush into the castle. The infinite sword energy seemed to hit a wall and couldn't move an inch. Xianxia took another step forward. The distorted space quickly changed in his hands and finally stabilized. Wang Xingxiao was stunned. Everyone was stunned. It wasn't a sword, a cold weapon, or a firearm. The distorted space was compressed and formed in Xianxia's hand. It was like a pen. It was like a real brush, a transparent, illusory, yet incomparably exquisite brush. The brush in Xianxia's hand had an indescribable sense of incongruity. Such a huge body, such an exquisite brush. Wang Xingxiao smiled subconsciously. The expressionless Xianxia swept his brush forward, and the soft and transparent tip of the brush suddenly drew a dazzling line in the air. The lines rose and fell. Before anyone could react, Xianxia had put down the second stroke. Then came the third. A majestic painting scroll was instantly imprinted in the void. Drawing in the void. Heaven Splitter painting. Without any warning, a loud explosion suddenly exploded in everyone's ears. In an instant, the painting that Xianxia had branded into the void became extremely realistic. This was the simplest painting. The content of the painting was just a seemingly bare mountain peak, but the aura of this mountain was incomparably majestic and domineering. It seemed real and illusory. The mountain peak seemed to have appeared for a moment, but it also seemed that it had never appeared. The space was still being torn. All the sword energy between heaven and earth suddenly went out of control. The dense sword radiance flashed and rushed directly into the mountain peak in Xianxia's painting. In the blink of an eye, the sword energy released by Wang Xingxiao had been swept away. No stop. For anyone in the time and space corridor, once the battle started, there was no possibility of stopping. Miracle City looked backward, but it was extremely beautiful and harmonious. Last night, in the bloody battle with the Holy Disarmament Corps in East Island, Beihai was full of artillery fire, and several cities were in a mess and blood flowed like rivers. All of this looked so gentle in the eyes of Xingtian and Xianyuan Wushang. It might be cruel, but in their eyes it was really very gentle. Compared with the purgatory where they had to struggle wildly to survive, even the war here seemed so beautiful. The tip of the brush vibrated in the void. Xingtian suddenly waved his hand, and the painting scroll that had absorbed countless sword energy disappeared instantly. The moment he put down the brush again, a blood-red and somewhat shocking word, kill, had appeared in the void. As soon as the word fell, Wang Xingxiao, who hadn't come back to his senses, suddenly realized that something was wrong. At this moment the whole world seemed to be full of malice. Everything between heaven and earth that he could touch had a sharp edge. Every gust of wind and every trace of air was destroying the inside of his body as he breathed. What was this? What was this? Wang Xingxiao felt it was incredible. The sword energy coat that enveloped him flew gently and wrapped Wang Xingxiao tightly in an instant. Wang Xingxiao's eyes were extremely cold. He had never seen such a fighting style or even heard of it. But now he was different from before. He didn't have to fear anyone anymore. He was determined to get Xianyuan Feng. Now that he had encountered some unexpected enemies, Wang Xingxiao didn't mind making the scene bigger. On the gate of Emperor Dong's palace, Wang Xingxiao straightened his body. In an instant, the monstrous sword energy burst out with an extremely violent momentum. There was no brewing process. The sky above Emperor Dong's palace became completely blurred. Huge arcs of light that connected heaven and earth appeared in every corner of Emperor Dong's palace. That was the extremely condensed sword light, with a sharpness that could tear everything apart. The arcs of light kept splitting within the range of Emperor Dong's palace, and more arcs of light rushed toward Xingtian. Xingtian kept waving his hand that held the brush and wrote the word, suppress, in the blink of an eye. When the last stroke fell, all the suppress characters spread rapidly and filled the sky and earth. But it still didn't work. Xianyuan Wushang narrowed his eyes and sighed softly. The image of Xingtian holding the brush might be a little strange, but compared with the domineering figure who pulled the bow in East Island, this was his strongest state. Xingtian was a calligrapher. However, in the current environment, it was impossible for him to stop Wang Xingxiao with his ability. Countless suppress characters flew in the air. Wang Xingxiao raised his eyebrows and took a step forward. Crack. The extremely violent sword energy grew almost limitlessly. Countless suppress characters were suddenly torn apart by the infinite sword light. Wang Xingxiao's figure had already appeared in front of Xingtian. Wang Xingxiao's sword energy coat kept flying in the air, and a halo of sword energy appeared around him one after another. The brush in Xing Tian's hand was directly shattered by the flash of sword energy. The next second, his huge body was directly blown away by the surging sword energy and smashed into the castle. The ocean-like sword energy completely poured into the castle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Wang Xingxiao raised his eyebrows slightly and took a step forward. He had already appeared in the bedroom on the 6th floor of the castle. Li Tianlan sat on the edge of the bed, staring at him blankly. Qin Weibai's eyes were extremely cold. She looked at Wang Xingxiao as if she was facing a formidable enemy. Take. As soon as Wang Xingxiao opened his mouth, the sword energy coat that enveloped him suddenly became extremely excited. It didn't give Wang Xingxiao time to speak at all. It lifted the coat and turned into a beam of dazzling sharpness. The whole coat instantly left Wang Xingxiao's body and rushed to Li Tianlan. Wait! Wang Xingxiao's expression changed dramatically. But before his voice died away, the sharpness that the coat turned into had rushed to Li Tianlan and pierced his heart in an instant. Wang Xingxiao's expression changed dramatically. On the bed in the bedroom, Li Tianlan looked down at the beam of sharpness that pierced his heart in a daze. After a long silence, he blinked his eyes. What do you mean? He looked at Wang Xingxiao and asked flatly. Chapter 1051. It's over. The moment the hidden coat of sword energy pierced Li Tianlan's chest, Wang Xingxiao's heart sank to the bottom. It had nothing to do with whether he wanted to or not. In terms of form, Li Tianlan must not die. Wang Xingxiao did not intend to kill Li Tianlan. The Wang family of Beihai, which had just experienced the decisive battle in Beihai, was also in a weak period. At this time, the Wang family of Beihai still needed to stand on the same side as Emperor Dong's palace to face all aspects, especially the pressure from Zhongzhou state. The honeymoon period of the cooperation between the two sides had ended after the final battle, and they were destined to be opponents for most of the time in the future. But neither Li Tianlan nor Wang Xingxiao wanted to completely destroy the other. It was not that they couldn't do it, but the situation didn't allow it. If either side collapsed, the butcher's knife inside Zhongzhou state would fall on the head of the surviving side as soon as possible. This might be a stalemate, but it was also a stalemate that could allow the situation to develop smoothly. Before Emperor Dong's palace and the Wang family of Beihai had a way to break the stalemate, or to be exact, before Wang Tianzong fully recovered and Li Tianlan really broke through and became the heavenly sun, the stalemate would continue. No matter how fierce the two sides fought in daily life, they had to be united in the face of Zhongzhou state. This was also the reason why Wang Xingxiao dared to come. He dared not say that he could defeat Li Tianlan, but he was not too afraid of Li Tianlan. He speculated that Li Tianlan was seriously injured, so he came to take Xianyuan Feng. Because of the delicate relationship between the two, even if Xianyuan Feng fell into the hands of the Wang family of Beihai, Li Tianlan would not really go against the Wang family of Beihai. He might do that himself. But today's Emperor Dong's palace was no longer barefooted and penniless. They had put on shoes now. Emperor Dong's palace was big, which undoubtedly meant great strength and power, but it was also Li Tianlan's responsibility. He would find a way to get Xianyuan Feng back, but everything he did was within the rules. If he dragged it on for a few years, when Xianyuan Feng and Wuxia were fully integrated and fully charged, it would be up to Wang Xingxiao to destroy Emperor Dong's palace. But now, Wang Xingxiao's purpose was extremely pure. He just wanted to capture Xianyuan Feng. He didn't want to kill anyone, let alone Li Tianlan. But the coat of sword energy, which combined carefree energy and Wang Tianzong's sword energy, went completely mad when it saw Xianyuan Feng on Li Tianlan's body. Wang Tianzong's consciousness had fallen silent. Worryless unleashed all of her energy. Even with the suppression of the sword qi, she would be able to regain some of her freedom in a short period of time. She could clearly feel Xianyuan Feng's weakness. Perhaps it was not just weakness. For substances like them, not having any energy was equivalent to being infinitely close to death. Xianyuan Feng had run out of energy. Therefore, without any hesitation, Wuxia rushed to Li Tianlan with his sword energy. The weak but extremely condensed edge easily tore the black windbreaker formed by Xianyuan Feng, and then mercilessly pierced into Li Tianlan's heart. Xianyuan Feng Wuxia wanted it. As for Li Tianlan, if he could get rid of the threat, he would do it without hesitation. The raging sword energy suddenly exploded in Li Tianlan's heart. Intense pain spread throughout his body. Li Tianlan could clearly feel that his heart was completely torn by the sword energy, but his body was still extremely numb. After experiencing the crazy pain and itch during the breakthrough, even if that feeling had disappeared physiologically, it was still deeply rooted in his mind. His body was a little numb and he was at a loss. He was at a loss about the changes in his body, about the complete shattering of all his martial arts knowledge in the process of the breakthrough, and about many things. So when the energy edge pierced into his chest, Li Tianlan didn't feel much pain. The sword energy tore his heart and lungs. More energy spread out in the fastest time, trying to completely wrap the black windbreaker that Shen Yuanfeng had transformed into. Worryless was so excited that the pure energy edge was trembling non-stop. But for Li Tianlan, Worryless had nothing. In his perception, Worryless' excitement was full of malice. Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows and finally raised his head. His eyes fell on Wang Xingxiao and he was still at a loss. But no matter how confused he couldn't not recognize Wang Xingxiao. This breakthrough did destroy a lot of things for him, but it was just a breakthrough, not amnesia. Even if Li Tianlan was at a loss, his mind was always clear. What do you mean? Wang Xingxiao clearly heard Li Tianlan's voice. It was a somewhat doubtful voice. But in his ears, it was an extremely tough question. Are you okay? Wang Xingxiao, who saw the sword energy coat piercing Li Tianlan's heart, suddenly felt his heart sink. He even felt that he was dreaming. The chosen one was invincible. Everyone was a human after all. Everyone had a heart. That was everyone's vital point. His heart was pierced. It was self-evident what this result meant. But Li Tianlan, the moment the edge pierced his heart, Li Tianlan's aura suddenly fell to the bottom, but soon became strong again. How could this be possible? The last radiance of the setting sun? Or... Li Tianlan laughed. His face suddenly became as pale as paper. Not only his face but also his hands and even his neck. All the exposed skin became pale in the blink of an eye, as if all the blood had been sucked out. But his aura was getting stronger and stronger. Wang Xingxiao seemed to understand something and seemed to agree with the idea of the last radiance of the setting sun. He suddenly wanted to laugh. The young Dong Huang. The invincible Dong Huang who had just ended the final battle in Beihai. Dong Huang, who was supposed to create a dynasty, died in his own bedroom in his own headquarters? This is not my intention. I just want to take Shen Yuanfeng. Wang Xingxiao smiled bitterly. He even began to think about the situation after Li Tianlan's death. I believe you. Li Tianlan nodded with a calm expression. You don't dare to kill me. If I die, the Wang family of Beihai will not survive. That's your position. Li Tianlan said calmly, but I'm different. I can kill you. If you die, there's still Wang Tianzong Summer Solstice and Wang Xiaoyao. For Emperor Dong's palace, I'm indispensable. But for the Wang family of Beihai, you are not indispensable. Wang Xingxiao narrowed his eyes and quickly calmed down. You can't kill me, he said in a calm tone. Li Tianlan looked at him and said nothing. He let the beam of sharpness nail into his heart. His exposed skin became whiter and whiter without any color of blood. Anything else you want to say? Wang Xingxiao said with some pity. If you have any instructions, I'll deal with it at my discretion. Li Tianlan lowered his head. Wuyo's energy had almost completely enveloped Shen Yuanfeng. In this state, Ruthless had no ability to resist. No need. Li Tianlan said softly. His skin was as pale as paper, but his aura suddenly became extremely strong. Ruthless noticed the change at once. It pierced into Li Tianlan's heart. The infinite sword energy had been raging inside his heart. His heart had long been broken. But at this moment, Li Tianlan's broken heart suddenly began to tremble. The incredibly surging sword energy suddenly appeared. Bang! A thunderous heartbeat suddenly sounded in Li Tianlan's body. Heart, Wang Xingxiao's pupils suddenly contracted. He could hear it clearly. This heartbeat was different from the others. But the most different thing was that this heartbeat came from Li Tianlan. The right atrium of his heart. What was this? A second heart. Yes, it was a second heart. Li Tianlan couldn't explain it. The second heart was the biggest change that had occurred to his body after his breakthrough. The so-called specialty of his hometown that Xianyuan Wushang had given him contained an incomparably rich and abundant energy. Like a vast ocean, the enormous energy stimulated all the functions of his body. His body kept producing new blood. The blood roared, boiled, and gathered in his chest. It was like a whirlpool condensing all the blood. During this process, there was no more blood in his body except his chest. However, the abundant energy endlessly strengthened the hematopoietic function in his body. So the blood was produced again, and then it was sucked out by the whirlpool in his chest again and again and again. The endless blood condensed into a substance and finally formed a new heart in his right chest. This heart was very, very small, but every time it pulsed, it required a tremendous amount of energy. Li Tianlan's original heart was broken by Wuyo. Feeling the crisis of survival, the right heart almost sucked out the blood in his body again in an instant and slowly pulsed for a moment. Infinite power suddenly burst out, stimulating the incomparably rich vitality of the dragon vein. Wuyo's sharpness was completely pushed out, and the broken heart began to heal. The abundant blood began to rush and roar in his body with the pulse of the second heart. Almost instinctively, Wuyo began to retreat and fell on Wang Xingxiao again. A small part of the energy it left in Xianyuan Feng was completely absorbed by the black trench coat. In an instant, the golden patterns on the black trench coat began to light up. Li Tianlan slowly got up, and the surging power cheered in every cell in his body. Li Tianlan paused for a moment. At this moment he suddenly didn't know how to make a move. His understanding of martial arts was completely shattered in the breakthrough. The swordsmanship that used to be so handy became extremely strange to him. He thought for a second. Then he raised his palm to Wang Xingxiao stiffly. Sword energy? Power? Or something else? It was an indescribable feeling. Following the direction of his hand, the space in the bedroom instantly collapsed. The coat of sword energy enveloped Wang Xingxiao at the same time. Before Wang Xingxiao could react, his whole body was directly pushed up by the incomparably huge force and flew backward like a cannonball. Li Tianlan frowned slightly. The force of this blow fell on Wang Xingxiao. If Wang Xingxiao smashed into the wall like this, the whole castle would probably need a major repair. He pressed his outstretched palms slightly. Buzz. The wall of Emperor Dong's palace instantly became extremely illusory. Wang Xingxiao's body went directly through the wall and was slapped outside the castle. Wang Xingxiao was stunned. Li Tianlan himself was a little stunned. The two of them had the same idea. What the hell is this? Li Tianlan didn't know. At this moment he only knew that he wanted to do it and he could do it, so he did it. What the hell is this? Li Tianlan's figure flashed slightly, and his whole body appeared directly outside the castle. Like a cannonball, Wang Xingxiao was blasted out of the castle. His body landed steadily on the ground and slid on the ground for a distance of dozens of meters. The coat of sword energy completely wrapped his body. An extremely powerful aura was boiling on Wang Xingxiao's body. Wang Xingxiao, who was extremely shocked, seemed to have calmed down. He raised his head and looked expressionlessly at Li Tianlan, who was floating in the air. The two of them looked at each other slightly. "I've told you can't kill me." His figure slowly rose into the air and the sword energy roared and surged around him. Wang Xingxiao laughed and said, "I'll play with you today." Chapter 1052. For a long time, Wang Xingxiao's image in Li Tianlan's heart had been relatively vague. The so-called vague did not mean that it was unclear, but that it had many faces. More importantly, the two of them were actually not familiar with each other. In Li Tianlan's heart, Wang Xingxiao was a very tough person. He also looked very gentle, but he was not easy to compromise. He was also a very persistent and firm person. The young generation of Zhongzhou state before Li Tianlan appeared was the era of Wang Xingxiao and Gu Hanshan. At that time Wang Xingxiao was low-key calm and calm. The young generation of Zhongzhou state after Li Tianlan appeared was the era of Li Tianlan. Everyone watched Li Tianlan leave everyone, including Wang Xingxiao, far behind. The youngest combat capability of the Invincible Realm. His opponents were the famous Invincible Realm experts in the Dark World. They were the symbols on the divine and holy lists, Li Kuangtu and Wang Tianzong. Wang Xingxiao changed from a leader to a chaser. He still stayed still and silently chased after Li Tianlan. He was surpassed by Li Tianlan. He was surpassed by Jiang Shangyu. Gu Hanshan, who used to be as famous as Wang Tianzong, had already fallen at a speed that was enough to stun people. Even if the young master of Kunlun City was a genius with the heavenly king heart, Gu Hanshan did not make any progress in the nearly 3 years since he was defeated by Li Tianlan in the maneuver of the two academies. Instead, his realm regressed. What about Wang Xingxiao? He was still making progress silently. His mentality was not affected at all. He was stable, peaceful, and persistent. He cultivated his own martial arts and silently carried the entire Wang family of Beihai on his shoulders. In the past 2 years, except for the extremely tough declaration of war on the stage of Formidable Person, Wang Xingxiao had never made any radical remarks to the outside world. Under Wang Xingxiao's command, the various forces inside Beihai had a sense of propriety. They were tough when they needed to be tough, and they gave in when they needed to give in. The Wang family of Beihai had indeed lost a lot of things in the past 2 years, but what everyone saw was that Wang Xingxiao had kept more things. In this state, Wang Xingxiao could easily remind people of the young Wang Tianzong. He was calm, steady, low-key, and silent. He looked at the whole world, but he never paid too much attention to any of his opponents or friends. He focused all his attention on the things that were worthy of his attention. He would not be angry when he was surpassed, nor would he be depressed when he was hit. He was like a high-strength spring. No matter how much pressure he was under, as long as there was a chance, he would immediately bounce back to his original shape, or even bounce higher and further. Li Tianlong looked at Wang Xingxiao silently. Wang Xingxiao's smile was weak and faint. He was not high-spirited or arrogant, but at this moment he stood in front of Li Tianlong with indescribable confidence. The sword energy coat danced on him. The majestic sword energy flew and whistled, and the sharpness all over the sky was hidden. Wang Xingxiao stood motionless in the air, but there was an extremely condensed power slightly fluctuating with his breathing. The current you is a little interesting, Li Tianlong said calmly. He had officially entered the invincible realm. In other words, Li Tianlong didn't know whether he had entered the invincible realm, but there was no doubt that he had successfully broken through to a new level. The combat capability of the invincible realm had entered a new level. If it was not the invincible realm, what was it? There was a flash of confusion in Li Tianlong's eyes, and then he shook his head. After the breakthrough, he became extremely sensitive to all kinds of energy. The vague sword energy coat on Wang Xingxiao's body had a clear outline in his eyes. At a glance, he could roughly understand what was going on with Wang Xingxiao's state. Such a Wang Xingxiao, he was very difficult and tricky to deal with. Li Tianlong was almost sure that if he hadn't successfully broken through, he wouldn't have been a match for Wang Xingxiao. Wang Xingxiao's realm remained the same, but he had a magic weapon in his hand. The so-called magic weapon was Wang Tianzong's sword intent and sword energy, and it was the energy of Wuyo. This was the same reason that Li Tianlong could effortlessly sweep through the dark world when ruthless energy was abundant, or even more than that. If he hadn't successfully broken through, the current situation would have been a little embarrassing. Even now, Li Tianlong felt a little difficult to deal with. But it was also very interesting. This is Tiannan, Li Tianlong said calmly. So, Wang Xingxiao raised his eyebrows slightly. Do you want to get out of here, or do you want me to ask you to get out? Li Tianlong asked. Wang Xingxiao was stunned, and then he laughed. Obviously, he didn't expect Li Tianlong to say that. His smile was full of surprise. This is not your character. Li Tianlong might not be very familiar with Wang Xingxiao. But as a pursuer, it was impossible for Wang Xingxiao not to study Li Tianlong. What was Li Tianlong's character? It was the simplest. He came to Emperor Dong's palace from Beihai and even made a move, breaking into his bedroom. He wanted to rob Ruthless, and Wuyo even pierced his heart. Under normal circumstances, Li Tianlong would never let it go like this. But now it sounded like, as long as he left Tiannan, everything would be fine. Are you in a bad state now? You need to adjust, or... Wang Xingxiao said thoughtfully, speculating the reason for Li Tianlong's concession. In his view, this was Li Tianlong's concession. I need to think. Li Tianlong frowned. You're not leaving? From Beihai to Tiannan. Wang Xingxiao sighed softly. I really came from afar. I came for Xinyuan Feng. You know very well. Before the final battle broke out, you knew very well that this is the key to Beihai's future foothold. Li Tianlong didn't wait for him to finish. He simply nodded and said slowly, if you don't leave. He raised his palm hesitantly again, but his voice was extremely firm. Then don't leave. Boom. The world suddenly shook. Colorful sword light burst out of Li Tianlong's palm in an instant. The messy light flew around, and Li Tianlong's figure appeared directly in front of Wang Xingxiao. He punched. Li Tianlong's figure became completely blurred. After the breakthrough, his speed became faster. As he moved, Li Tianlan's body completely pulled out dozens of residual shadows. A large number of residual shadows had not disappeared, and the sound of countless punches and kicks had suddenly sounded. In the next second, the colorful sword light, which broke out first but arrived a step later than Li Tianlan, completely drowned the two figures in it. The sky above Emperor Dong's palace was full of colorful sword light. In the messy light and shadow, the two figures directly collided in the most direct way. Two different kinds of sword energy madly entangled and fought, and the incomparably loud dragon roar echoed in the sky. In an instant, one of the figures directly turned into fragments all over the sky. A large number of fragments turned into streams of light. The streams of light turned into Wang Xingxiao one after another. The sword energy kept fluctuating, and the moment countless Wang Xingxiao appeared, they merged into one again. A crisp and cold sword chime abruptly rang out between heaven and earth. High in the sky, Li Tianlan's eyes slightly narrowed. A snow-white stream of light had appeared in Wang Xingxiao's hand. The light was extremely heavy but so flexible. Firmament. This was the giant sword that Wang Xingxiao had been using since he was a child. The giant sword, which was almost taller than Wang Xingxiao, was directly pulled out of the sword energy coat. The moment the light shone, the sword with absolute explosive power had directly crossed the space and reached in front of Li Tianlan. Wang Dao sword. The sword edge kept trembling, destroying everything and moving forward. This was a kind of truly invincible momentum. Unparalleled in the world, crushing everything. The extremely condensed sword energy and energy vibrated wildly. Wang Xingxiao's figure was no longer blurred. The sword energy coat covering his body was exposed in front of everyone, and his clothes were completely flying. Wang Xingxiao's eyes were cold, and his aura was rising almost endlessly and crazily. Sword energy, sword intent, sword momentum, everything reached the peak in an instant. Outbreak. It was the most thorough and continuous outbreak without any reservation. The sword light went completely out of control. Heaven and earth kept shattering in the sword light. They turned into giant swords that covered the sky one after another. There was no order. Countless phantoms of giant swords appeared in front of Li Tianlan in an instant, as if they were crazy. Wang Dao's sword was completely formed. Without any hesitation, Wang Xingxiao, who continued to break out, suddenly raised the sword. The sword momentum changed. Overbearing sword. Fierce, crazy, unreasonable and murderous intent sword into the sky. The monstrous sword light swept everything and countless sword lights turned into Wang Xingxiao one after another. Every Wang Xingxiao appeared next to the giant sword phantoms of Wang Dao's sword. Attack, attack, attack. Without any pause, countless Wang Xingxiao and countless giant swords attacked Li Tianlan at the same time. He did not retreat. Li Tianlan's body stiffened for a moment. The rainbow-colored sword light quickly retracted. The next second, everyone heard a sharp sound that seemed to tear the world apart. Li Tianlan seemed to have turned into an extremely pure sword light in an instant. All the way forward, penetrating everything. The colorful sword light streaked across the sky with a long streamline. It shattered and disappeared. Wherever the sword light passed, the giant sword phantoms and Wang Xingxiao were torn into extremely messy sword energy at the same time. Li Tianlan, who had turned into a sword light, kept accelerating, getting faster and faster. A large number of giant swords disappeared almost at the same time. The sword light moved forward. Kept moving forward. It was tough, resolute, decisive and ruthless. The shining sword light almost broke the attack of Wang Dao's sword and overbearing sword in an instant and appeared in front of Wang Xingxiao. Wang Xingxiao did not retreat either. The huge sword edge in the sky vibrated, and his figure instantly became illusory. The sword energy coat, which had become completely obvious, completely wrapped his body again. Wang Xingxiao held the hilt with both hands. In the blink of an eye, he also turned into a sword light. Rush forward. No compromise, no retreat. Indomitable forward, the extreme outbreak. The surging sword light and energy burned almost endlessly, rushing to the colorful light in the sky. Heavenly Sword. Chapter 1053. The two beams of sword light approached each other with the same determination and strength. Heaven and earth had become completely chaotic at this moment. Colorful and dazzling, Li Tianlan, who had turned into a sword, moved from top to bottom. Everywhere he passed, the sky and the earth were filled with all kinds of light. It was incomparably bright and incomparably fierce. Every color and every ray of light was a different sword energy, majestic and chaotic, but perfectly integrated together. Countless sword intents turned into the purest sword light. This was no longer the 24 moves of sword. At this moment, this light was the purest swordsmanship. The colorful light kept refracting. Wang Xingxiao, however, rushed up from below. Blurred. Everything was blurred. It was a blurry and chaotic state. It was neither resplendent nor gorgeous. It was like a transparent flame that burned everything in its surroundings. His body rushed up. With his original combat power as the center, everything completely evaporated in the blurred light and shadow. The blurred sword light, which seemed to be able to burn everything, continued to accelerate and burst out. The air, space, and even the colorful sword light in all directions were all burned into nothingness. The surging colorful light spread again and completely covered all the buildings in Emperor Dong's palace. The moment the sword energy covered Emperor Dong's palace, the two beams of light, one above and one below, collided with each other in an extremely fierce manner. It was not the loud sound of gold and iron colliding. The moment the sword light collided, there was a dull sound like a fist hitting a fist. Breaking, boiling, chaotic, and erupting. The incomparably sharp, colorful sword light directly tore the transparent flame that seemed to be able to burn everything at the moment of contact. The flame-like sword light shot out in all directions in an extremely messy manner. The sword energy went completely wild with unimaginable destructive power. In the incomparably bright and shining light, Li Tianlan's palm suddenly turned over. The invisible shock wave of their collision shattered the space and swept toward all the buildings and people in Emperor Dong's palace. The next second, the colorful light that covered the entire Emperor Dong's palace suddenly lit up. Few people could notice this momentary change. But the few thunder-shocking realm experts in Emperor Dong's palace were keenly aware of all this. In the crowd, the military counselor's pupils suddenly contracted for a moment. The seemingly endless colorful sword light covered the entire Emperor Dong's palace, including everyone, every tree, every blade of grass, and every drop of water. It was soft, tough, and peaceful. The transparent sword light that was torn apart by Li Tianlan flew wildly. For ordinary people, the aftermath was absolutely destructive. The impact of the collision between the two spread everywhere. The messy transparent sword light and the shock wave swept through the entire Emperor Dong's palace in an instant, including everyone in the Emperor Dong's palace. The shining colorful sword light fluctuated slightly, and a large number of colorful ripples suddenly appeared in the air. However, nothing in the entire Emperor Dong's palace was damaged or changed by the shock wave. This was definitely not something that sword chi could do. Sword chi and sword intent that focused on attacking could indeed play a protective role at times, but it could not be so perfect. As Li Tianlan turned his hand, the colorful sword light that covered the entire Emperor Dong's palace suddenly became a domain. And it was an incomparably perfect and pure domain. Everyone was a little confused, including Li Tianlan himself. Li Tianlan didn't know why it was like this. He just felt that he could do it, but he didn't know why. In the crowd, only Xinyuan Wushang and Xing Tian watched all this silently and didn't speak. They didn't recognize the so-called four realms of martial arts in Miracle City at all. The chi-controlling, ice-condensing, fire-flaming, thunder-shocking realm sounded like it, but in fact it was specious. As for the invincible realm, it was even more ridiculous. The division between sword chi and domain was completely correct, but also completely wrong. Different ways of thinking would touch different truths, and all cognition would inevitably be limited. Domain, sword chi, everything was actually the most basic thing: energy. Pure energy. Different changes of energy would have different manifestations, such as sword chi and domain. But in essence it was the same. It was energy. The so-called martial arts and even higher levels, different paths, all had a more accurate adjective. Xianyuan Wushang knew that Li Tianlan would be confused, but he didn't dare to say and couldn't say the words that could only be perceived by Li Tianlan himself. 40. Xianyuan Wushang watched quietly. The completely transparent but burning sword light was broken into countless pieces, flying messily over Emperor Dong's palace. The dense sword light turned into a domain in the blink of an eye. Li Tianlan paused for a moment. Without hesitation. In the twinkling of an eye, the completely messy transparent sword light suddenly changed. The deceiving Taoist sword. Wang Xingxiao's figure was completely invisible. The entire space of Emperor Dong's palace seemed to be completely burning, blurring. The messy flying transparent sword qi and the burning space had completely merged into one, and it was difficult to distinguish them from each other. Wang Xingxiao completely completed the most perfect concealment while retreating. The sword light surged violently. The burning space was also surging. Heaven and earth seemed to be moving but also seemed to be completely different. Li Tianlan, who was surrounded by the colorful sword light, suddenly tightened his body. The sword light was like a tide, spreading in an instant, mighty and mighty. In an instant, the completely violent but illusory transparent sword light rushed toward Li Tianlan from all kinds of weird and tricky angles. Front and back, left and right, up and down. Endless attacks came from every unimaginable angle. It was hard to predict and impossible to guard against. The essence of Beihai's swordsmanship was indeed an outbreak. The swordsmanship of Beihai emphasized momentum, but it didn't mean that their swordsmanship didn't have corresponding changes and dexterity. As a super family that had represented the pinnacle of swordsmanship in the Dark World for hundreds of years, Beihai's swordsmanship itself was flawless. The deceitful Taoist sword sounded like only one move, but it was the pinnacle of the swordsmanship skills of the Wang family of Beihai. It was unpredictable and peerlessly bizarre, like a violent storm that was impossible to guard against. The sword light surged and vibrated. The colorful sword light held up for a moment with Li Tianlan as the center and turned into a colorful halo. The halo was completely torn apart by the transparent sword energy in an instant. The absolutely abundant energy tore apart Li Tianlan's sword energy defense, and countless attacks fell on Xin Yuanfeng's black windbreaker in an instant. Aggressive and oppressive Wang Xingxiao, who had enough strength to support him, seemed to be a completely different person. He was strong, determined, and decisive. His every move and every sword strike carried a touch of madness that was no less than Li Tianlan's. The indistinct sword light instantly brought about an incomparably violent storm. The transparent sword light kept flying and shuttling around the whole Emperor Dong's palace, with distinct layers and more tricky angles of attack. The sword energy cut through the windbreaker hair and face. Li Tianlan's face was directly cut by the sword energy, leaving a shocking wound. Blood flowed out. The wound healed instantly. Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows slightly, and the colorful sword light around him suddenly turned. The colorful light that covered the whole Emperor Dong's palace instantly shrank toward Li Tianlan. The light swept everything, and all the transparent sword light shuttling from all directions was swept and pressed toward Li Tianlan in an instant. The sword light completely turned into a domain. The domain that contained all the transparent sword light shrank completely, and the whole battlefield was shrunk in an instant. Wang Xingxiao might not be a threat, but his current situation was a little tricky. His sword energy and Wang Tianzong's were of the same origin, which was the result of being influenced since childhood. During the half a year on the stage of Formidable Person, Wang Xingxiao would be completely baptized by Wang Tianzong's sword energy every night. Now Wang Xingxiao's sword intent and Wang Tianzong's sword energy were almost completely compatible, and worryless energy was the strongest catalyst and fusing agent. It merged with Wang Tianzong's sword energy and became a coat that covered Wang Xingxiao. In this state, fighting with Wang Xingxiao was equivalent to fighting with Wang Tianzong directly. After all, as the energy core, worryless could completely bear the sword energy of the Chosen One. It was even more suitable as a pure energy body than Xin Yuanfeng. The sword energy of the father and son was infinitely compatible, but after all, it was not completely compatible. Even so, Wang Xingxiao's real combat capability at this time had reached the real peak, and he was only half a step away from Wang Tianzong in the period of Mormons. Before Wang Xingxiao's sword energy and worryless energy were used up, he was almost equal to the sword emperor of Zhongzhou state before the final breakthrough after fighting with tribulation. This state was undoubtedly stronger than Li Tianlan's state before the breakthrough. Li Tianlan had just broken through and needed to familiarize himself with it, while Wang Xingxiao could continue to make his sword intent and Wang Tianzong's sword energy more compatible. What did this mean? It meant that as long as worryless energy was not used up, it could always replenish Wang Tianzong's sword energy. Then when Wang Xingxiao's sword intent and Wang Tianzong's sword energy were completely compatible, Wang Xingxiao could fully exert Wang Tianzong's peak strength when he was in Mormons. In other words, this was the true strength of a supreme heaven's chosen. Wang Xingxiao's path was completely clear from today on. He only needed to make his sword intent fit Wang Tianzong. There was no bottleneck and the road in front of him could directly reach that supreme level. Li Tianlan's sword intent had been perfect and there was no bottleneck. As long as he had time he could also reach the supreme level. What both sides needed was time. Who would be faster? The step meant too many things. It was not only the advance and retreat between Emperor Dong's palace and the Wang family of Beihai, but also the life and death between Emperor Dong's palace and the Wang family of Beihai. Even Li Tianlan himself did not expect that an opponent he had left far behind would force him to the point where he could only race against time overnight. This was the foundation of the Wang family of Beihai, but it was also because of Wang Xingxiao's personal talent and efforts. This step between the two was extremely important. But it was not important. Realizing this, Li Tianlan was more determined. Wang Xingxiao might not have wanted to kill him at first. Because of the delicate relationship between Emperor Dong's palace and the Wang family of Beihai. But this so-called delicate relationship, no matter who took that step first, would be completely broken. In this case, what was the point of maintaining it now? Wang Xingxiao might have concerns. But Li Tianlan, who had broken through to the invincible realm and really stood on the threshold of the Chosen One, had no concerns. Kill. Such a Wang Xingxiao, such a deceitful Taoist sword, if it were in the past, it would be difficult for him to deal with. But the moment the sword energy turned into the domain, everything became clear. Li Tianlan's eyes suddenly became sharp, and the colorful light gathering toward him from all directions became brighter and brighter. The domain kept shrinking and the battlefield between the two shrank rapidly. Countless transparent sword chi were particularly bright in the domain that was completely covered by the colorful light, and a large number of sword lights were being forced to gather. 1, 2, 3, countless sword lights gathered together in the domain that was constantly shrinking. Sword of Emperor path. There was no thinking or hesitation at all. The moment when all the sword lights were about to gather, the sword momentum of the deceitful Taoist sword instantly changed. Wang Xingxiao's figure reappeared, and the huge sword edge of firmament had already pierced Li Tianlan's chest. He was really unimaginably determined and strong. Wang Xingxiao's sword intent had been changing, smart, determined, decisive and confident. He had always followed Li Tianlan's fighting rhythm and never fell behind. Sword of Emperor path. Sovereign descent. Li Tianlan had also studied this. One sword. Among the 6 paths of reincarnation of the Wang family of Beihai, this was the simplest sword. It was also the sword that looked the most similar to Sword of Emperor path, but it was different. Could even be said that they were completely different. Sword of Emperor path emphasized momentum, but Sword of Emperor path sought simplicity. The simplest straight stab, the strongest explosion, the shortest distance and the fastest speed. The simplest ones were often the ones that had been tempered thousands of times. The huge sword edge of firmament flashed with cold light. The sword and the figure instantly became extremely clear, simple and ordinary. The sword edge went straight. Every time this seemingly simple sword trembled, it carried with it an extremely heavy sharpness and killing intent. This sword couldn't be avoided. Even Li Tianlan couldn't avoid it. The sword edge tore the air, crossed the distance, and the moment the heavy sword tip was fixed on the black windbreaker, Li Tianlan stretched out his hands. He put his hands together and the sword light shone. A strong and violent force burst out from Li Tianlan's hands. There was a sudden wild sound between heaven and earth. Blood gushed from Li Tianlan's hands, and the huge and heavy sword edge of firmament suddenly broke into 2 pieces. The moment the blood beads and the sword edge shone in the air, Wang Xingxiao let go of the sword hilt, put his fingers together like a sword, and pointed directly at Li Tianlan. The distance between the two narrowed in an instant. Wang Xingxiao had been attacking. He not only kept up with Li Tianlan's rhythm, but also tried to suppress Li Tianlan's rhythm. Li Tianlan had never experienced such a feeling in his life, except in the practice with Li Honghe. Wang Xingxiao's fingers even became completely transparent at this moment. The mighty sword energy gathered at his fingertips, with extreme power and speed. His sword intent was of the same origin as Wang Tianzong's. At this time the sword energy on him was supreme. Worryless energy was extremely abundant. Even in terms of his own physique, Wang Xingxiao also had the innate wind and thunder veins. Wang Xingxiao had never been bad. Even though Li Tianlan had risen so fast, Wang Xingxiao, who had always kept a low profile, had always been regarded as one of the top experts of the younger generation. Now, with the appearance of the sword energy coat, all his shortcomings seemed to be completely made up. His own physique, his own vision, his own fighting art, everything seemed to be completely perfect. There was no firmament in his hands, but at this time, this sword was the closest to perfection. The holy sword. Calm, majestic, deep and lofty. The sword energy and sword intent merged. The sword intent merged with the sword light. The sword light merged with the energy and the energy merged with the sword energy. In an instant, Wang Xingxiao's whole body became a sharp light that seemed to be able to split the world. The distance between the two was too close. The moment the sharp light rose, the irresistible sword intent of the holy sword appeared directly in front of Li Tianlan. At such a close distance, Li Tianlan punched Wang Xingxiao's arm hard without hesitation. Their arms collided fiercely and the sword energy soared into the sky. The second before the holy sword was about to explode, Wang Xingxiao, who had his fingers together like a sword, suddenly loosened his palm. His palm slightly deviated under Li Tianlan's fist, but in an instant he stretched forward and suddenly grabbed Li Tianlan's clothes. Li Tianlan's clothes. What were Li Tianlan's clothes now? It was ruthless. It was Xianyuan Feng, who had just absorbed a small part of worryless energy but had not recovered yet. Wang Xingxiao had never forgotten his purpose. Li Tianlan was very strong, completely stronger than he had expected. In Wang Xingxiao's estimation, Li Tianlan's combat capability should be weaker than it was now. He came to Tianan to take Xianyuan Feng because he had speculated that Li Tianlan was very likely to be seriously injured, but he had also been prepared for Li Tianlan not to be injured. He thought that his current strength should be stronger than Li Tianlan's. But when he saw Li Tianlan, he knew that it was not the case at all. Not to mention anything else, Wang Xingxiao could not figure out Li Tianlan's second heart. He had thought that his strength was already stronger than Li Tianlan's. As long as worryless merged with ruthless, he would not have to worry about Emperor Dong's palace in the future. Even if Wang Tianzong could not recover in the next few years, with the combination of worryless and ruthless, the Wang family of Beihai would have the peak combat capability. Or if Wang Tianzong's injury recovered, or if his sword intent and his father's sword energy were perfectly integrated, then there was no need to be afraid of Li Tianlan. He felt that he was stronger than Li Tianlan, and the speed of merging sword energy should be faster. It would not be too late to deal with Emperor Dong's palace then. But now Li Tianlan, he seemed to have broken through? The two seemed to have stood at the same starting point and looked at the same end. Li Tianlan had the intention to kill Wang Xingxiao. When Wang Xingxiao realized this, how could he not have the intention to kill Li Tianlan? But no matter what, his main target was still Wu Qing. If he could get ruthless today, the battle with Li Tianlan might not have to happen today. He suddenly grabbed Li Tianlan's collar with his outstretched hand. The moment the mighty sword energy suddenly broke out, Wang Xingxiao suddenly raised his head. In his sight he saw Li Tianlan's extremely calm and indifferent face. Calm, resolute and calm. He did not retreat, give way, dodge or avoid. Li Tianlan raised his palm. A strong uneasiness instantly enveloped Wang Xingxiao. There was no hesitation, no time to think. He suddenly loosened his grip on Xianyuan Feng's collar. The incomparably majestic sword light suddenly broke out in his hand, burning everything. Wang Xingxiao's whole body seemed to be completely burning at this moment. 6 Paths of Reincarnation Sword. Chapter 1054. There was no transition. The stalemate in everyone's eyes seemed to be completely broken in the blink of an eye. Sword light filled the sky above Emperor Dong's palace. The moment Li Tianlan and Wang Xingxiao got closer, Wang Xingxiao loosened his grip on Xianyuan Feng's collar. With unprecedented determination and madness, Wang Xingxiao completely burst out all his sword energy and energy. It was a kind of determination to die if he couldn't win. Staking everything on one throw was the most extreme madness. He was risking his life. It didn't matter whether the situation had reached this point or not. What mattered was that Wang Xingxiao didn't retreat at all. Burning. Breaking out. Without hesitation. Sort of 6 paths of reincarnation. The most powerful unique skill of the Wang family of Beihai, the peak of martial arts of the Wang family of Beihai, The intertwining sword intent suddenly burst out in Wang Xingxiao's hands. Light and shadow intertwined. A deafening buzz suddenly rang out in the chaotic and blurry world. The empty air, the messy light, the violent airflow, and everything in the world seemed to have sharp edges at this moment. They were sharp, radiating in all directions, yet surging with unparalleled power. Wang Xingxiao's body didn't change, but the moment the endless sword energy burned around him, his figure seemed to expand endlessly, occupying the whole Emperor Dong's palace and the whole world. In a trance, Wang Xingxiao's open palm instantly closed. Forward punch. The distance between him and Li Tianlan was too close. The distance between their palms was even closer. Just a few centimeters away, the fist with all the sword energy and energy burst smashed over, and the space between them suddenly broke. Wang Xingxiao's fist hit Li Tianlan's palm hard. The sword energy roared. Sword of 6 Paths of Reincarnation was the combination of the 6 moves of the Wang family of Beihai. The abundant sword energy and energy supported Wang Xingxiao's physical strength and will, and the sword energy kept blooming. The unparalleled sword of King Path. The extremely complicated and simple sword of Emperor Path. The indomitable sword of Dominating Way. The extremely weird sword of Mysterious Way. The irresistible sword of Heavenly Path. The majestic and peaceful sword of Holy Path. The sword energy rotated and grew endlessly. The buzzing sound of the sword energy between heaven and earth had instantly turned into an ear-piercing howl. The two figures, entangled in sword chi, collided wildly and rose rapidly into the sky. The sword chi became more and more violent. All the sword light left the ground of Emperor Dong's palace at the same time and bloomed in the air. 7 colored sword lights filled the sky. The sky was constantly being devoured by the burning sword chi. Chaos, whistling, and collision. The sky was filled with dazzling brilliance that shot through the air without restraint. Who will win? On the ground, 2 voices rang out almost at the same time. One was gentle while the other was heavy. Military advisor. Xingtian. As soon as the words left their mouths, they were stunned at the same time and subconsciously looked at each other. Isn't that obvious? The same 2 voices gave the same answer at the same time. All of them sounded extremely confident. Qin Weibai and Xianyuan Wushang froze at the same time and looked at each other. Military counselor stood beside Qin Weibai. Xing Tian stood beside Xianyuan Wushang. However, the distance between them was not far, so the 4 of them looked like they were standing together. The exact same question, the exact same answer. Qin Weibai might have been blindly confident, but Xianyuan Wushang was reasonable. Xing Tian hesitated and wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. He couldn't say that he had completely seen through Li Tianlan's breakthrough, but at least he had some understanding. Strictly speaking, Li Tianlan's breakthrough could not be regarded as a breakthrough in martial arts, but it could not be said that it was not. To be precise, Li Tianlan's breakthrough was from the power level of Miracle City to another angle, an angle of the power level of space-time corridor. This was undoubtedly a very obvious and absolutely strong transformation. However, because of the lack of a lot of information, Li Tianlan was now in a state of uncertainty. This state greatly limited Li Tianlan's performance. Obviously, he was not in his peak state. In this case, Li Tianlan's strength had naturally improved compared to before the breakthrough, but there were too many things that he needed to explore and was not clear about. So for now, this kind of combat strength improvement was actually relatively limited. This was the problem of upper and lower limits. If the upper limit of Li Tianlan after the breakthrough was 10, then in this state, Li Tianlan was probably standing at the end of the lower limit. It might be 3, 2, or even 1. The key to this reason was the lack of information. Wang Xingxiao, on the other hand, was completely different. He also had a lack of information, but he didn't know about it at all, so he didn't have any doubts in his heart. Whether Wang Tianzong's path was correct or not, at least he had reached a certain limit and end. The sword chi controlled worryless energy and Wang Xingxiao controlled the sword chi. Wang Xingxiao might not have broken through, but in this complete state his realm was equivalent to infinitely close to that supreme realm. In this respect, his realm was higher than Li Tianlan, who had just entered the invincible realm. You think so? You're exaggerating. As if knowing what Xing Tian was thinking, Xianyuan Wushang said calmly, Wang Xingxiao's realm is very high, but how high can it be? He has his own foundation. It's not so much that his realm is high, but that the sword chi and Wuyo's realm are high. Now he looks perfect, but there are gaps in the combination and utilization of each other. So strictly speaking, even if Wang Xingxiao's current realm is higher than his brother's, it's not much higher. No matter when has my brother ever lost a battle with someone at the same level or slightly higher than him? The so-called stalemate right now is all fake. Fake. Qin Weibai looked at Xianyuan Wushang and asked. My brother didn't do his best. Xianyuan Wushang laughed. Tianlan is not a person who will hide his strength. Qin Weibai shook her head. Look around. Xianyuan Wushang said. They looked around at the same time. They were surrounded by the grass and trees of Emperor Dong's palace. In the extremely fierce and even destructive battle, Emperor Dong's palace was still intact. Although it could not be said to be unscathed, the damage was almost negligible. In their line of sight, wisps of colorful sword light were shining from everywhere. As Li Tianlan and Wang Xingxiao rose into the air, they rushed into the sky at the same time. Not doing his best was not hiding his strength. It was because Li Tianlan had put some of his attention elsewhere during the battle. After the battlefield left Emperor Dong's palace, Li Tianlan was really unscrupulous. Qin Weibai looked up at the sky. Everyone looked up at the sky at the same time. Xianyuan Wushang watched quietly and suddenly said, It's very interesting, he said softly. What? Xing Tian and military counselor asked at the same time. In the sky. Xianyuan Wushang said. Qin Weibai's brows furrowed slightly. The sun hung high in the sky above them. The sunlight covering the earth looked extremely blurry in the spreading sword light. The transparent burning sword energy was getting more and more violent. Wang Xingxiao continued to break out. His aura kept rising and he became crazier and more terrifying. The extremely dazzling seven-colored sword light was still shining. It was colorful. The battle might be extremely fierce. But the scene looked extremely beautiful and dreamy. Qin Weibai watched quietly. At this moment she didn't know if it was an illusion, but she seemed to feel that all the light in the colorful sky seemed to dim quietly for a moment. Chapter 1055. Almost no one noticed the abnormality in the sky. Or it could be said that the abnormality was too weak. Emperor Dong's palace was full of colorful lights, protecting all the domains. Countless domains, big and small, began to change the moment Li Tianlan and Wang Xingxiao rushed into the sky. The light turned into pure energy, and the energy turned into sword energy in the shortest time. The sword energy rose into the sky, quietly, faster and faster. The sky was full of dazzling brilliance. The sky was full of bright colors. However, this incomparably resplendent color was gradually becoming more intense. It was a very subtle change, but it was the simplest truth. The darker the sky was, the brighter the light was. What did this mean? Qin Weibai was a little confused. She subconsciously glanced at Xianyuan Wushang. Xianyuan Wushang kept his head up. Among all the people, perhaps except Li Tianlan, only Xianyuan Wushang and Qin Weibai noticed the change in the sky. Even Wang Xingxiao didn't notice it. All he noticed was that Li Tianlan's sword energy was getting stronger. After leaving the range of Emperor Dong's palace, Li Tianlan's combat capability almost improved a lot when he was in the air where he couldn't destroy the palace. The situation that seemed to be evenly matched gradually tilted towards one side. The transparent sword light was burning with colorful energy, and the colorful energy turned into sword light to extinguish the flame with a wave of Li Tianlan's hand. Li Tianlan became more and more determined. He let go of his scruples and kept increasing his strength. Sword energy, strength, speed, willpower, everything began to be absolutely concentrated. Wang Xingxiao clearly felt the suppression. This feeling of suppression gradually became more and more obvious, as if it was going to completely swallow him. Li Tianlan still had doubts deep in his eyes. But that confusion gradually began to disappear. In his eyes, Wang Xingxiao saw that he was thinking. It was very obvious. The sword energy roared and flew high in the sky. Wang Xingxiao's figure seemed to be getting bigger and bigger. 6 different kinds of sword energy constantly blended together. Their figures were getting higher and higher. The transparent sword light that burned everything was like a storm high in the sky, constantly expanding and completely enveloping the core of the battlefield. The storm began to shrink. A large piece of colorful sword light was torn apart. The outermost bright light collided with the edge of the storm and formed a stalemate. The center of the storm began to approach the two. Between heaven and earth, every space was filled with incredible sharpness. The scales that had already tipped over seemed to be pushed back bit by bit. This was the first time Wang Xingxiao had used the complete 6 paths of reincarnation sword. With his own realm, without the help of Wang Tianzong's sword energy, he couldn't even use the complete holy sword, let alone the 6 paths of reincarnation sword. 6 paths of reincarnation sword. He was very familiar but also very unfamiliar. Therefore there was still a gap in the most extreme eruption. However, with the improvement of his combat capability, even if there was a gap in his 6 paths of reincarnation sword, Li Tianlan could do nothing about it. However, Wang Xingxiao also knew this, so he didn't try to make up for the gap. Thus, the sword qi continued to circulate in the sky, and its power continued to increase, gradually approaching the peak of its power. If Wang Tianzong performed this move himself, there would be no process at all. At the moment when the two of them rushed to the sky, the 6 paths of reincarnation sword with the most extreme power would directly explode in the sky. But Wang Xingxiao needed time. This was a big difference, but it wasn't that big of a difference for the current battle. The 6 different sword lights became more condensed and sharp. Li Tianlan's suppression of Wang Xingxiao gradually disappeared. The storm raged high in the sky, and the whole sky seemed to become an extremely vague and transparent huge whirlpool at this moment. The edge of the whirlpool spread outward, but the core kept shrinking. The inner and outer layers. The whole whirlpool gradually formed a natural circle, and every arc of the whirlpool was extremely awe-inspiring. Suppression. At this moment, Wang Xingxiao even vaguely showed signs of suppressing Li Tianlan. More than 2 years. Even in the hundreds of years of the Dark World, if not counting the eternal sword above Mormons that ended Wang Tianzong's life, today's battle could almost be said to be the peak battle in the Dark World for hundreds of years. Wang Xingxiao's attack became more and more violent and domineering. The storm of sword energy whistled and rotated. His voice was calm and dignified. I can give you one last chance. Give me Xinyuan Feng and I can let you go today. Condescending. This posture was so dignified, but it was so natural. Li Tianlan, who had been thinking about something silently and dealing with Wang Xingxiao's attack, laughed when he heard this. Are you talking to me? Maybe you still don't understand your current situation. Wang Xingxiao's voice was flat and piercingly cold. Maybe you have a new breakthrough now, but you can't block this sword. I can give up the current sword energy and part of Wuyo's energy. But after this sword breaks out, I can only give up these at most, but I won't be hurt. The chance of you escaping unscathed is equal to 0. Do you still want to persist? Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows slightly and remained silent. The colorful light all over his body kept flying. Countless rays of light began to slow down and become sticky. The sky seemed to become darker. 6 paths of reincarnation is nothing more than this. Li Tianlan said blandly. Wang Xingxiao's eyes suddenly became sharp for a moment. In that case, go to hell. Crack. An extremely clear sound suddenly rang out in the sky. Sword of Wang Dao, sword of deceit, sword of hegemony, sword of emperor path, sword of heavenly path, and sword of holy path. The 6 sword qis seemed to have completely merged together in the incomparably huge storm vortex. Wang Xingxiao suddenly straightened his body. The sword energy of the Chosen One burned wildly, and Wuyo's energy began to pour out without reservation. The huge vortex of sword energy seemed to be completely still at this moment. It was not static. The vortex was rotating so fast that it looked like it was motionless. Boom. The loud noise was earth-shattering. It exploded. The monstrous sword energy completely exploded at this moment. The indescribable sharpness swept across the air in an unstoppable manner. Space, airflow, sword light, and sharpness went forward. Everything was silently annihilated. The colorful sword light was swallowed and disintegrated at a speed visible to the naked eye. There was no room for resistance. The blazing sword light continued to expand, growing and multiplying endlessly, ceaselessly reincarnating without end. The burning sword light occupied the sky. The colorful light was getting less and less. 6 paths of reincarnation. This was the pinnacle of the Wang family of Beihai's swordsmanship for hundreds of years. It was also the pinnacle of the Dark World swordsmanship for hundreds of years. In terms of swordsmanship, even the Li family's 24 moves of sword seemed to be a little less sharp than 6 paths of reincarnation. Today's Wang Xingxiao was infinitely close to perfection. This move of 6 paths of reincarnation was also infinitely close to perfection. The sword light was mighty above the sky. Wang Xingxiao, whose aura instantly became weak, watched the colorful sword light being swallowed by the burning sword energy and Li Tianlan being completely shrouded by the endless sword light. Do you regret it? He said in a hoarse voice. Shenyuan Feng is still mine. Li Tianlan raised his palm. The sword light seemed to be completely swallowing him in the next second. His voice resounded between heaven and earth. I still have one move. Are you afraid? What? Wang Xingxiao sneered. Li Tianlan's voice sounded with boundless coldness, calm and indifferent. Break of Reincarnation. 24 moves of sword, Break of Reincarnation. The last move of 24 moves of sword was also an unfinished move. It was also the move that the war god used to restrain 6 paths of reincarnation. This move was not complete in the Li family. It was not complete in the Lin clan either. But this move was complete in the sky, very complete. Whoosh! An extremely sharp whistling sound suddenly rang out in the sky. All the colorful sword light did not disappear, nor was it swallowed. All the sword light completely changed the situation in an instant. The dazzling 7-colored light completely disappeared. All the sword light suddenly turned pure black. It was black, not dark. The pure and extreme black sword light suddenly burst out with Li Tianlan as the center. It was mighty like a black ocean. The surging black ocean completely broke the sword energy storm of 6 paths of reincarnation. Li Tianlan's figure turned into every drop of water in the black ocean. Every drop of water also turned into Li Tianlan. The ocean surged and destroyed everything. Li Tianlan's figure appeared directly beside Wang Xingxiao. His fingertips, which were condensed with thick black color, slowly touched Wang Xingxiao's sword energy coat. Boom! In the loud bang, the sword energy coat on Wang Xingxiao suddenly burst into pieces. Countless energy and sword energy became completely scattered. Chapter 1056. No words could describe Wang Xingxiao's feelings at this moment. Shock, astonishment, disbelief, despair, and a myriad of other emotions that even he couldn't describe. The dazzling 7-colored sword light that shone in the sky turned into the purest black in an instant. The darkness surged and spread out. At this moment, it was as if a black ocean had suddenly appeared in the sky. It was vast and mighty but extremely quiet. It was like eternal silence and coldness. This was the purest black. It rose and fell between heaven and earth, and even the shadows were completely contained in it. The sword energy was like the sea, tearing the sky, the sword light and the burning flame. Li Tianlan's figure was everywhere. He was infinitely close to Wang Xingxiao but infinitely far away. His whole person seemed to have completely become this black ocean, and he could appear in any corner at will. His fingertips touched Wang Xingxiao's sword energy coat. It was neither fast nor slow, but it was impossible to dodge. The sword energy that had completely turned black appeared in front of Wang Xingxiao, occupying his whole world. It was the ultimate shattering and destruction. Heaven and earth withered and everything turned into ashes. Nothing could continue to exist in this kind of sharpness. This sword seemed to be incomplete in Li Tianlan's hands, but it was already the most complete sword move. 24 moves of sword, Break of Reincarnation. Everything was forcibly suppressed. It was even completely crushed in an instant. The 6 paths of reincarnation sword, which Wang Xingxiao was not very familiar with, had countless flaws in this black ocean. The black ocean wrapped all the light and rushed forward. The 6 seemingly perfect and endless sword energy were suddenly completely torn into individuals. Li Tianlan's finger touched Wang Xingxiao's chest. Worryless energy and Wang Tianzong's sword energy were constantly turbulent, fragmented, and quickly separated. He lost. The ending was so clear. The sword energy coat clinging to his body was constantly broken. In the surging sword light, Li Tianlan's aura suddenly weakened, but Wang Xingxiao's aura almost fell to the bottom in an instant. The surging black ocean occupied the sky, blocking everyone's sight. The boundless black sword energy tore Wang Xingxiao's sword energy coat. Li Tianlan's eyes were firm and sharp. Broken reincarnation. This was not a sudden flash of inspiration that allowed him to complete this move of the absolute sword. Instead, it was a vague thought. It was not until he really converged all the light and the black sword chi was completely formed that he could be sure that the vague sword chi he felt in the sky above Mount Dibbing in North Sea was the break of reincarnation. He tried to imitate it, but it was completely beyond his abilities. Even though he had broken through again and obtained the second one, this heart was still unable to imitate even 1/10,000th of that sword's charm. However, in that instant of imitation he still managed to grasp some things in the end. These things became inspirations and ideas, constantly shining in his heart at the moment of his breakthrough. This time Li Tianlan stopped imitating. Under the circumstances where his abilities allowed it, he tried to use this sword. Compared with the sword in the sky, the power of this sword seemed to be countless times weaker, but it was just what Li Tianlan could bear. This sword directly tore apart the most imperfect part of Wang Xingxiao's 6 paths of reincarnation. The outcome had been decided. With victory and defeat there would be life and death. Li Tianlan did not hesitate. The overwhelming black sword qi shook with a loud bang. The sharp edge spread all over the sky and rushed to the sword qi coat on Wang Xingxiao. That was the armor of the combination of worryless energy and the chosen one's sword qi. Strictly speaking, as long as this coat was not completely destroyed, Wang Xingxiao, wrapped in it, would not be hurt no matter what he faced. For Li Tianlan, today Wang Xingxiao took a shortcut with the help of the foundation of North Sea, but he had become his biggest threat. If he let him go this time, Wang Xingxiao would be more difficult to deal with next time. So, kill. Go all out. The black sword light shook wildly, rolling up huge waves in the sea. The darkness continued to spread and absorbed the sunlight. There was only the purest black and a faint light blue on the battlefield. Light blue? Li Tianlan was stunned. He suddenly felt that this scene was a little familiar. Wang Xingxiao was also stunned. Now he had no way to stop Li Tianlan's killing move. After all, he was a little too careless. If he hadn't consumed the sword qi in Kanglin, he might have had the power to fight against Li Tianlan now. But now, at least before returning to Mount Dibbing to replenish his energy and sword qi, he had no way. Li Tianlan could not let him go. So the only thing Wang Xingxiao could do was to wait for death. When his coat was broken, the black sword light would completely crush him into powder. But that faint blue, Wang Xingxiao was sure that it was not his sword qi. He was also sure that it was not Li Tianlan's sword qi. The faint blue appeared so abruptly in the absolute darkness. It seemed to be harmless, but at this moment, both Wang Xingxiao and Li Tianlan felt extremely uncomfortable. Wang Xingxiao was panic-stricken, and Li Tianlan was disgusted. Without a sound, the faint blue color in the darkness suddenly extended and spread. The familiar feeling deepened in an instant. In Li Tianlan's sight, there was only a little blue light extending and becoming a virtual heartbeat. The lines spread rapidly. The lines spread rapidly. The black sword qi still existed. But at this moment, outside the sword qi, everything in the world seemed to become illusory. Outside the sword qi, the sunlight, the white clouds, the air, the wind, everything turned into a string of constantly flowing data. The world became virtual. All the distance disappeared completely. An incomparably blurry virtual figure was constantly outlined in the virtual world, becoming clearer and clearer, more and more real. He appeared in the black sword qi and appeared in front of Wang Xingxiao. What Li Tianlan saw was only the extremely deep and bright eyes in the other party's incomparably solemn eyes. All the virtual lines disappeared completely. The world was completely restored to reality. The figure of the man with double pupils was still a little vague and stood in front of Wang Xingxiao. The black ocean surged and drowned everything. The uninvited guest raised his palm without hesitation. Heaven and earth shook. The world instantly turned into night. The same black. The same sword qi. The moment the man with double pupils raised his hand, he used exactly the same unique skill as Li Tianlan. 24 moves of sword, break of reincarnation. The sword light kept blooming in his hand. At the same time, the man with double pupils pulled Wang Xingxiao. The world became virtual once again. Li Tianlan realized something in an instant. The moment the two black oceans collided, Li Tianlan, whose aura had gradually become weak, raised his palm again. The sword light swirled wildly between heaven and earth. The man with double pupils seemed to have expected it. His figure became more and more illusory without looking back. This is... Wang Xingxiao, who saw this scene clearly, suddenly narrowed his eyes for a moment. The sword light, which seemed to burn everything, burst with a loud bang with Li Tianlan as the center, touching Wang Xingxiao and the man with double pupils. 6 paths of reincarnation sword. Li Tianlan. 6 paths of reincarnation sword. The 6 paths of reincarnation sword that belonged to Li Tianlan. This sentence was so incongruous, but it was so true. Sword of King path, Sword of Deceitful path, Sword of Hegemony path, Sword of Emperor path, Sword of Heavenly path and Sword of Holy path. The same 6 swords. Different from Wang Xingxiao. The 6 sword lights took shape in an instant and then suddenly rose to the extreme in the next second. There was no brewing process. In an instant the extreme broke out. Boom. The incomparably wild sword light tore the black ocean of sword qi in an instant and swept over the figures of the man with double pupils and Wang Xingxiao. The figures of the two had become blurred. The sword light swept over and their bodies shook for a moment at the same time. The next second the virtual lines spread quickly. The figures of the two suddenly disappeared. Chapter 1057. The virtual light blue lines were dotted with white dots. Everything was digitized the moment it was enveloped by the light. The faint light burst out from a point and spread in all directions. The light faded the white clouds and sunlight in the sky and outlined the shape of a door. 2 completely virtual figures fell out of the door and stumbled. One of them knelt on one knee and the other almost fell to the ground. Cough, cough, cough. Blood kept flowing out of Wang Xingxiao's mouth along with coughing. The moment when the sword energy coat was constantly pulled and deformed and torn might have been very short, only less than 1/10 of a second, but the pervasive sword energy still left extremely serious injuries inside and outside his body. In addition, it was the first time he had experienced such an incredible virtual travel. The moment he returned to the real world he was extremely embarrassed. Wang Xingxiao crushed a button on his body with trembling hands and swallowed the powder mixed with his blood. He put his hands on the ground and gasped for breath. Lin Shi, who was kneeling on one knee, also coughed up a cloud of blood, but his breath completely stabilized at once. The scorching sun shone unscrupulously in the endless grassland. He slowly straightened his body and sized up his surroundings. A bit further away, the apostle and saint were currently rushing over with quick steps. It's safe here. Lin Shi looked down at Wang Xingxiao and reached out to him. His Majesty won't chase us here. Wang Xingxiao hesitated for a moment. Although the other party had saved his life, Wang Xingxiao was very sure that he did not know the other party after careful observation. There was no such thing as unwarranted kindness in this world. Any seemingly unrequited kindness meant that he would have to pay a greater price to repay it in the future. He took a deep breath, held Lin Shi's hand and stood up. He was vigilant, but he did not show it on the surface. You saved me. Don't worry about it. Lin Shi said with a smile. Wang Xingxiao looked around and was in a trance. They seemed to be in the center of a grassland, but this grassland was a little too big. With Wang Xingxiao's eyesight he could not see the end of the grassland. About 1,000 meters away there was a blurry black and white color and they were in groups. Zebras? Wang Xingxiao was a little stunned. Seemed to be a huge group of zebras. Those? A safari park? Was there such a large-scale wildlife park in Tiannan? Not to mention the safari park, it was not easy to find such a large piece of flat grassland in Tiannan, which was mostly mountainous and not much developed. Wang Xingxiao was not sure about the details of Tiannan, but he was sure that there should be no wildlife parks around Xianyuan City. This plan could only be carried out after 3 years. So, Wang Xingxiao carefully recalled the magical shuttling just now. Lin Shi pulled him into a door and then opened another door. The whole process only took a few seconds. Had they left Li Tianlan's sword qi in such a short time? Left Emperor Dong's palace? Left Xianyuan City? How was this possible? Wang Xingxiao thought silently, recalling where the nearest safari park was from Xianyuan City. He asked subconsciously, where is this? Africa. Lin Shi said softly, to be exact, it's West Africa. His voice was indifferent. Cough, 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 cough. Wang Xingxiao couldn't catch his breath and instantly coughed violently. Blood flowed out of his mouth again, which was shocking. But Wang Xingxiao didn't care about this at all. He raised his head and looked at Lin Shi dumbfounded. In a hurry, the Mandarin in his mouth suddenly turned into the northeastern dialect of Beihai with a little foreign emphasis. What the hell are you talking about? We're in West Africa, so we're very safe here. His Majesty can't catch up with us here. Calm down, don't get excited. Lin Shi looked at Wang Xingxiao. The smile on his face disappeared and his whole person became very calm. This extremely outstanding appearance of the 11th prince of the war god realm was really like his father. He was not very domineering but not as gentle as Jade. Most of the time he was calm and even had no characteristics, but it was impossible to ignore him. West Africa. Wang Xingxiao murmured to himself and shook his head hard. Apostle and Saint trotted over. Your Highness, how are you? Apostle looked solemn, but Saint was as if facing a formidable enemy. She even raised her palms subconsciously, and a thick white light flashed in her hand. Li Tianlan. They were still very unfamiliar with this identity and this name. The Li Tianlan they knew was completely different from the current Li Tianlan. No matter how short the fight between Lin Shi and him was, it was enough to make people's scalps tingle, and they didn't dare to be careless. Your Highness. Wang Xingxiao subconsciously caught this sensitive word, and his mind became more and more confused. I'm fine. Lin Shi shook his head and gestured to Wang Xingxiao. His injury is more serious. Saint raised her palm without any hesitation. An incomparably dazzling milky white beam of light suddenly burst out from her hand and enveloped Wang Xingxiao. A warm feeling instantly enveloped Wang Xingxiao's whole body. Then it was beyond him. It was a repair within the scope of common sense. The external wound healed quickly. The incomparably pure and soft energy went deep into his internal organs, healing all the injuries. The speed of blood flow in his body continued to accelerate, and his cells seemed to be rapidly proliferating, regaining their activity. In a flash, Wang Xingxiao's injury had completely recovered. Wang Xingxiao stood there quietly, feeling the changes in his body. All these changes should make him ecstatic. But a strong sense of uneasiness and chill kept rising from his bones, almost freezing his soul. He didn't know what it meant. Not knowing was what scared him the most. Who the hell are you? Wang Xingxiao looked at Wang Xingxiao and asked seriously. In just a few seconds, Lin Shi had traveled thousands of kilometers from Tianan to Africa. Regardless of whether it was true or not, it was impossible for the middle-aged woman beside Lin Shi to completely heal his injuries with a single move. In fact, it was beyond everyone's knowledge. My name is Lin Shi. Lin Shi introduced himself again. One of the branches of the Lin clan. We have lost contact with the headquarters of the Lin clan many years ago. Now we are the most down-and-out branch of the Lin clan, right? The most down-and-out? Wang Xingxiao raised his eyebrows. Yes. Lin Shi nodded naturally. In our branch there are only 3 of us here now. Even the family headquarters has to be relocated. Isn't this down-and-out enough? I don't think so. Wang Xingxiao shook his head calmly. With your ability, no one will think that you are the most down-and-out branch of the Lin clan. It doesn't matter what others think. Lin Shi said blandly, as long as you don't think so, it means that we have the basis for cooperation. Cooperation? Wang Xingxiao was stunned. Of course it's cooperation. Lin Shi said slowly, otherwise why would I save you? Wang Xingxiao thought quickly in his mind and said cautiously, what kind of cooperation are you going to do? It's about dealing with His Majesty Li Tianlan. Lin Shi said seriously, but his words sounded extremely awkward to Wang Xingxiao. Deal with Li Tianlan? Then we are enemies? But what about the sincere respect and awe in your words? Deal with Emperor Dong's palace? Wang Xingxiao said to himself. No, it's against His Majesty Li Tianlan, and only against His Majesty Li Tianlan. Lin Shi said slowly, I will re-edit my identity. Now I need a position that can stand opposite to His Majesty. Chapter 1058. Wang Xingxiao found it hard to understand the logic of Lin Shi's words for a moment. However, he could still understand the simplest and most obvious meaning. This seemingly inexplicable and mysterious guy, who was indeed very powerful, was going to stand on the opposite side of Li Tianlan. He needed such a position. This position might not be the basis for his cooperation with the Wang family of Beihai, but with this position and his strength, everything could be discussed. Wang Xingxiao pondered for a while. In today's battle with Li Tianlan, both sides had probably exposed the limits of their combat strength, which was equivalent to falling out with each other. When both sides were only one step away from that supreme realm, or even half a step away, was the tacit understanding between them that they had not made it clear but had decided to break the balance after the breakthrough to settle the score was still there. Wang Xingxiao was not sure. After all, he could not be completely sure of the current strength of Emperor Dong's palace and the specific development in the next few years. But in terms of the foundation of the Wang family of Beihai, if he and Wang Tianzong's sword energy completely matched and reached that supreme level, plus the foundation of Beihai overall, he no longer needed to help Emperor Dong's palace. Even now, if he had a chance to kill Li Tianlan, he would not hold back. What about Li Tianlan? Wang Xingxiao nodded and then shook his head. Anyway, now if someone wanted to stand with him to fight against Li Tianlan, he would welcome it. The premise was that the other party really stood on the same side as him. Do you have a grudge against Li Tianlan? Wang Xingxiao asked. No. Lin Shi shook his head slightly. In fact, although the current His Majesty is different from the His Majesty I know, in essence he has always been one of the people I admire the most. He deserves everyone's respect. I mean everyone. Wang Xingxiao looked at Lin Shi strangely. He held back the words that were on the tip of his tongue, but he did not say them in the end. In fact, he really wanted to ask him, "Little brother, did you recite the wrong lines?" He swallowed the words, but he laughed sarcastically. In that case, why do you choose to stand on my side to fight against the person you admire the most? I'm just on my side. Lin Shi seriously confirmed his position and then continued, in order to continue to grow in a sense, you can think of it as challenging the strong for your own improvement. This statement wasn't completely accurate, but it was absolutely reasonable. Right now Li Tianlan was not a strong man in his eyes. But if the environment was limited here, he was indeed no match for Li Tianlan. How to become Li Tianlan's opponent? This was what Lin Shi wanted to do this time, and it was also his way of growth. Wang Xingxiao looked at Lin Shi expressionlessly and did not speak for a long time. Time passed slowly in silence. After some time he suddenly asked, "Is this really Africa?" While Wang Xingxiao was silent, Lin Shi had been quietly looking at the endless grassland in the distance. When he heard Wang Xingxiao's words, he nodded. This place is less than 200 kilometers away from Lagos. If you want, I can take you there to verify it. The apostle at the side suddenly waved his hand. A metal ball about the size of a ping-pong ball suddenly appeared in his hand. The incomparably smooth metal ball shone with a soft luster under the sunlight, seemingly without the slightest gap. The apostle threw the metal ball in his hand into the air. The next second, an incomparably clear roar suddenly rang in Wang Xingxiao's ears. The metal ball kept vibrating in the air, replacing and reassembling itself. Its mass was increasing rapidly and the ball kept expanding, getting bigger and bigger, becoming more and more irregular. Almost in the blink of an eye, the round ball's shape completely changed. It had 4 limbs and the arc on the surface of the ball was completely flattened. It was as if there was a blade constantly sliding on the huge metal, and the disintegrated metal pieces became different shapes and rearranged themselves. Wang Xingxiao looked at this scene in a daze, unable to speak anymore. Right in front of him, the extremely small metal ball directly turned into a metal giant more than 10 meters tall. It was not an ordinary metal humanoid creation. The metal giant in front of him had sharp edges and clear body lines. It had intelligent facial features, and its body was also covered in metal armor. A large amount of liquid metal kept flowing on its body, adjusting every part of its body. When all the adjustments were completed, the huge metal giant closed its mouth and silently knelt in front of the apostle. Wang Xingxiao looked at the silent giant. He was once very familiar with this giant. He had seen this giant countless times in different situations. His mind seemed to have become incomparably chaotic at this moment. All types of worlds intertwined in his mind, becoming a mess. Permanently preserved on the bookshelf, recorded reading history. The apostle casually waved his hand. The body of the huge metal giant kneeling in front of him quickly changed. Its body gradually shrunk, but its structure became more and more compact, its entire body giving off an incomparably tough and fierce feeling. Wang Xingxiao watched as the metal giant, in just a few short seconds, turned into an extra-large 7-seater off-road vehicle. An enormous off-road vehicle of a model he had never seen before. That made sense. How could he have fucking seen this so-called model before? The atmosphere became completely silent. Lin Shi was silent for a while. He looked at the off-road vehicle, which was extremely unsightly in his eyes, and laughed self-mockingly. Look, the 3 of us look like 3 acrobats, don't we? The mockery and self-mockery in his smile were extremely obvious. However, Wang Xingxiao didn't think too much about it. He was also looking at the car in front of him. This car was very unfamiliar to him, but the image of the metal giant just now was extremely familiar to him. Taking a deep breath, he looked at the apostle and slowly asked, "Megatron?" The apostle was stunned. He quickly entered the Miracle Cities network based on Wang Xingxiao's 3 keywords, and then he laughed. If you like him, he can also become that, Optimus Prime. Right, this is a joke. This is Sky Hunter's shadow, my first child. As for the Megatron you mentioned, it does look a bit like him. But this is just a coincidence. The Apostle said as he reached out his hand. Get in the car. We can set off for Lagos now. Lagos. The capital of Nigeria, the largest economy on the continent. Wang Xingxiao silently walked into the car, his mind becoming more and more chaotic. A huge impact kept striking his mind, and for a moment he didn't even know what to say. Or rather, he wanted to say too many things, but he didn't know how to start. You have a lot of doubts. Lin Shi sat in the car, looked at Wang Xingxiao and said quietly, Yes. Wang Xingxiao nodded, then shook his head. He took a deep breath, looked at Lin Shi and slowly said, I think we should have a good talk. Chapter 1059. The mighty, overbearing and somewhat ostentatious huge off-road vehicle was driving on the vast grassland. The interior of the car was extremely spacious. It was even abnormally spacious beyond the surface area of the vehicle itself. The soft and delicate leather sofa was extremely comfortable. Wang Xingxiao and Lin Shi sat face to face. A little farther away, a light curtain full of the aura of the future was suspended in front of the Apostle. A large number of pictures were rolling on the light curtain. The Apostle looked at them with great interest, as if he was understanding something. Saint, who was not outstanding in appearance but had an extremely quiet and gentle temperament, sat elegantly on the other side, looking down at a very thick book. The sunlight occasionally flowed on the branches and leaves. Wang Xingxiao occasionally glanced at it, only to find that it was full of symbols that he didn't recognize. The vehicle moved forward steadily. But there was no driver. Not to mention a driver, this vehicle didn't even have a cab. The entire interior space of the vehicle had been thoroughly transformed. Lin Shi sat on the sofa very relaxed. In front of him was a device similar to a laptop. At this time he collected the information one by one and placed them on the screen of the laptop. You can have a look at all of these. In the silence, Lin Shi suddenly spoke. He handed the laptop in his hand to Wang Xingxiao and said in a calm voice. Wang Xingxiao, who was silently thinking about something, was stunned and subconsciously took the laptop. The densely packed documents almost took up the entire screen. The screen was divided into 3 small screens. The title above the first small screen was Emperor Dong's Palace. The title above the second small screen was the Wang family of Beihai, and the title on the third screen was a question mark. Wang Xingxiao glanced at Lin Shi with some doubts. The current database of Emperor Dong's Palace has been protected by the quantum network. For some reason we can't crack it or invade it, but... No, wait a minute. Wang Xingxiao looked up at Lin Shi with a confused face. Quantum network? Lin Shi said yes. This answer was too brief and affirmative, which annoyed Wang Xingxiao. Where is the quantum network? Quantum network. Wang Xingxiao was no stranger to this term. Beihai's biological research level was at the top of the world, but its advantages in other aspects were not obvious. It could even be said that it was at a disadvantage in many fields. But even at a disadvantage, Beihai still did not give up on some high-end scientific fields. Quantum network was also a research topic in Beihai, and it was one of the most cutting-edge topics. How advanced was it? In Beihai, this research project was only a small team. It was so cutting-edge that Beihai didn't even have the energy to invest in it. Therefore, this was just a research project. There wasn't even a laboratory. During the decisive battle in the North Sea, Qin Fangqing immediately used his authority to block all the communication signals in the North Sea. As a result, the North Sea suffered great losses as soon as the battle began. At that time, the scientists in the North Sea had said what would happen if this so-called quantum network existed. But this is only if. It was the if of North Sea. It was also the world's if. At present, no country in the world had a real quantum network, and it was foreseeable that it would be impossible for a long time to come. The so-called quantum network was just a theory, and the research in this area had just begun. How could Emperor Dong's palace have the so-called quantum network? Wang Xingxiao felt like an idiot, but because of some doubts he had to ask, what is a quantum network? He felt that he and Lin Shi had a different understanding of certain terms. Maybe the quantum network that Lin Shi was talking about was the internet that everyone knew? This might sound nonsensical, but it was the most likely scenario. Lin Shi glanced at the Apostle. The Apostle, who was currently researching something in front of his own light screen, looked at Wang Xingxiao and laughed. I've investigated the progress of some large countries' research on quantum networks. From certain aspects they are correct. At the very least, the most basic theory is correct. The key to opening the quantum network is the phenomenon of quantum entanglement. When two microscopic particles are on opposite sides of the universe, no matter how far apart they are, as long as the two particles are quantum entangled by changing the quantum state of one particle, the state of the other particle that is very far away can also be changed. The signal can transcend the barriers of space and time and directly reach the other particle. However, due to some special reasons, the understanding of some special things by the quantum scientists here has deviated, so it is very difficult for them to solve basic problems, such as the so-called uncertainty principle. As the apostle spoke, his smile became more and more obvious. The fragile nature of quantum particles makes it very difficult for them to solve the problem of information loss. The solution they have proposed and experimented with can't be said to be wrong, but it is very clumsy. It's like they can reach out and get something, but there is a wall in front of them that they can't break at all. The thing is right there, but if they want to get it, they have to take a detour and they have to walk around the Earth to get to the other end. Judging from their current progress, they can only achieve short-distance information transmission with a single node at most. Strictly speaking, that can't even be regarded as a real quantum network. Wang Xingxiao looked at the apostle silently and then at Lin Shi. So, there is no real quantum network on Earth. So where does the quantum network come from in Emperor Dong's palace? Let me correct you. The apostle looked at Lin Shi, who had been silent, and continued, I'm not telling you that there is no quantum network here. I'm just saying that your quantum science has just started, and quantum scientists haven't developed a quantum network, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. In fact, there are countless quantum nodes and quantum network base stations here, and Beihai has just fully enjoyed the convenience brought by them. For example, Wang Xingxiao asked very calmly. For example, East Island. The apostle said, for example, the silence of East Island in the final battle. From your point of view, it's because Xianyuan Wuxiang hacked into the network system of East Island with technology, and controlled all the communication signals and weapons control rights of the whole East Island. But in fact he's not good at this. Maybe he has similar equipment, but he can't do it so flawlessly. Strictly speaking, he activated the nodes of the quantum network, let the quantum network cover the whole East Island, replaced the internet of East Island, and intercepted and tampered with a lot of information. That's why the weapon system of East Island was completely silent. In fact, East Island didn't know the real situation until the end of the final battle. Before the end of the final battle, they always thought that they had the upper hand in the final battle of Beihai. Xianyuan Wuxiang? Wang Xingxiao raised his eyebrows. Big shot. The apostle answered without hesitation. Even in our eyes, he's a big shot, second only to His Majesty and Her Highness Qin Weibai. He's the fat man you saw in Emperor Dong's palace. Wang Xingxiao didn't dwell on this. He just asked, does Beihai's quantum network technology come from Xianyuan Wuxiang? He's a doctor like me, but he doesn't have the ability in this area. Saint, who was flipping through the book, said softly, he should have done it with some tools. What he's done now is just to protect the database of Emperor Dong's palace. He has no way to invade it again. What about you? Wang Xingxiao turned to look at the apostle. He saw the metal ball that the apostle threw casually turn into Megatron with his own eyes. He saw some light screens floating around him, and he saw a lot of data flowing on the light screens. Wang Xingxiao couldn't understand what it was for a moment, but the inexplicable sense of technology was obvious. Quantum network was undoubtedly also technology, and it was the technology fantasy of most countries. Then, what about the apostle? The apostle was silent for a long time, and then he smiled bitterly. I'm a good-for-nothing now, or as His Highness said, a juggler. His smile was extremely bitter, and there was a touch of suppressed anger in it. A good-for-nothing? No, of course not a good-for-nothing. They followed Lin Shi from the God of War's realm to the territory of the space-time corridor. Although there were only two people, they were personally chosen by the God of War. Whether they were apostles or saints, they could be said to be big figures in the entire God of War's realm. Lin Shi, apostle and saint. The three of them were at the same level, but they had completely different focuses. Saint was a doctor, and his frontal combat ability was not outstanding. Lin Shi was good at frontal attacks, and he would face Li Tianlong head-on. Until he died or Li Tianlong left here. Under normal circumstances, the combination of these two people was enough. Apostle. Only the apostle. His arrival was not only to strengthen this small team, but also to some extent to cover up and prevent some of the worst situations. Although he and Lin Shi were at the same level in terms of pure destructive power and comprehensive combat ability in all aspects, the Apostle had an absolute advantage. Under normal circumstances, the three of them could have directly used the Apostle's ability to stand firm the moment they chose a place to stay. Why did they need to cooperate with Wang Xingxiao? The relationship between the God of War's realm and the Emperor Palace? This was the reason why Lin Shi covered up the Wang family of Beihai, but it was definitely not the reason for their cooperation. But who could have thought that the moment they entered Miracle City, they encountered an accident that no one, including the God of War, expected. The Princess Royal of the space-time corridor stood in front of them. Her warnings might not be obvious, but all of them were aimed at the Apostle, and it could even be said that she completely blocked the Apostle's firepower. Just like the off-road vehicle they were riding in now. Even Sky Hunter before he transformed. He looked mighty and domineering, but what was the use? Not to mention the planetary level or even stellar level weapons like the Dark Matter Star Destroyer cannon. Even the most basic weapon system on Sky Hunter had been put away. The off-road vehicle seemed to be speeding on the grassland, but in fact Sky Hunter's thinking center was conveying the feeling of protest to him every minute and second. But what could he do? The Apostle was completely sure that as long as he dared to show the true form of Sky Hunter, he didn't even need to do anything, and the killing intent from the Princess Royal would appear immediately. At that time, not to mention him, even Lin Shi and Saint would not be able to escape. That Princess Royal even showed a posture of not hesitating to fight with the God of War here. What could he say? What else did he dare to say? He could only hold it in. So now he could only modify such an off-road vehicle and could only use the quantum network to bring Wang Xingxiao and Lin Shi from Tiannan to West Africa. He couldn't make any aggressive posture. This thing looked fancy but actually could not hurt anyone. If it wasn't like a piece of trash who played juggling, what was it? Now he was just hiding and slacking the whole time. Unless Lin Shi and Saint were desperate, it would be difficult for them to gain a foothold here in a short time. Looking for Wang Xingxiao and cooperating with the Wang family of Beihai was the best way. He can provide us with some confidential information we need, Lin Shi said. Lin Shi said. He did not deny the value of an apostle, but now it seemed that this was his greatest value. For example, what you see. Wang Xingxiao subconsciously looked down at the notebook in his hand again. It's impossible for us to break through the network protection of Emperor Dong's palace now, so we can't get in touch with their core database. But some things can always be investigated from another angle. Lin Shi said blandly, starting from the Flourishing Age Fund, we investigated certain interactions between all partners of the Flourishing Age Fund and other enterprises, and found some very interesting things and a lot of secret agreements. I can tell you with certainty that the scale of the Appreciation Fund is not what it looks like now. The strength of the Flourishing Age Fund is much more terrifying than what it shows now. The military counselor is not just in finance. Specifically, in Zhongzhou State, among the listed groups that many of us have heard of, nearly 30 of them are secretly controlled by the Flourishing Age Fund, and they are completely controlled. The multiple investments seem complicated, but in the final analysis, they all come from different directions of the Flourishing Age Fund. The 30 large listed groups are involved in energy, insurance, healthcare, internet, real estate, transportation, aviation, media, automobiles, international trade, machinery manufacturing, electronic communications, and even military fields. They are everywhere. The 30 groups that are secretly controlled by the Flourishing Age Fund are also constantly investing in some small and medium-sized groups. Just within Zhongzhou State, the Flourishing Age Fund has formed a very complicated multi-industry industrial chain, which covers the 6 major groups. Even many people, including the bosses of some small and medium-sized groups, don't necessarily know that their big boss is the Flourishing Age Fund. This force is extremely complicated and it's hard for us to sort it out in a short period of time. But what is certain is that once this force breaks out, the impact will be unimaginable. Countless fields are constantly radiating in Zhongzhou State, using money as the most basic driving force, absorbing and even creating everything they need. Stars, scholars, officials, elites of various industries, money converge and resources are used interchangeably. Everyone is pursuing a kind of interest or a kind of goal. Everyone has different goals. The more money, the bigger the circle and the wider the members. Your needs are completely easy for another person in the circle, and his needs are also solved by another person. exchange, mutual assistance. As long as it's a reasonable need, there's nothing that can't be solved. If there really is, then people who can solve the problem will be pulled into this circle again. Lin Shi's voice suddenly paused. He looked up at Wang Xingxiao and asked with burning eyes, "What do you think it is like? Society?" Wang Xingxiao, whose face had already changed, said in a dry voice, "A small society. And it's a capital-oriented society. When this society develops to a certain extent, almost no one can refuse its pull. At the beginning, it needs a lot of wealth, but this wealth begins to be injected into different things with the expansion of the circle. The more factors are injected, the crazier and crazier the expansion will be and more concealing. Those who are drawn in may not need money, but they may need power, fame, beauty, and many other things. There will always be something they need. As long as they accept this need, they will naturally enter this circle in order to get more of what they need, and their own existence will become the needs of others. Society needs transactions, order, social strata, and capital. The first to join this circle are those who have already gained benefits. They bring capital and get benefits, and they will continue to maintain this stability, so they form order and form the initial social strata. People keep coming in, transactions keep happening, the social strata become more and more obvious, and the order becomes more and more stable. Everyone in this circle gets the benefits they want because they pay something they can give. Pay and get back. Everything looks very fair and there are no traps because it's the huge capital that maintains all this. The Flourishing Age Fund has become the person who controls most of the capital in this small society. Everyone here is not his confidant or subordinate, but they can all become his capital and his pawns. Some of them may notice it or they may not, but it doesn't matter because in such a more and more stable order, even if they are used, they can get back. A loose, invisible, but incomparably huge and lively small society that is almost impossible to destroy. Lin Shi quietly concluded, "It's not a genius idea, but the initial construction must be extremely difficult and it takes a lot of effort. For this alone, Her Highness Qin Weibai is amazing, very amazing, because this system can be applied to almost any form of society. It's like a knife. It may not be sharp, but it's everywhere. In this small society, everyone can be regarded as the peripheral forces of Emperor Dong's palace, and they can be regarded as the foundation of Emperor Dong's palace. As time goes by, this society becomes more and more stable. The next development of Emperor Dong's palace is beyond Beihai's imagination. Beihai seemed to have such a plan hundreds of years ago, but it was detected and stopped by Zhou State, and now, Lin Shi did not continue. But Wang Xingxiao knew very well what he was going to say. It was too late. Everything was too late. When this small society developed to this point, it was meaningless to stop it. Before the final battle of Beihai, there might be room for all this. But with the victory of the final battle of Beihai, the Prince Group was about to be suppressed in all aspects, and even the Special Warfare Group was facing the risk of falling apart. The rise of the new group was equivalent to Emperor Dong's palace bringing a part of this small society from the invisible state to everyone. And when the whole small society was exposed, Wang Xingxiao suddenly froze. "You've thought of it?" Lin Shi laughed. "When this small society completely appears in front of everyone, Emperor Dong's palace will become another Beihai province, and it will be in a state more cohesive than Beihai province. It will be absolutely stable and His Majesty will be absolutely powerful." What does this mean? What did it mean? Everything was very clear. In that case, Emperor Dong's palace would no longer need Beihai. At that time, Zhou State would no longer need Beihai. Because in the face of such a Emperor Dong's palace, checks and balances were meaningless, because there was no way to do so. Emperor Dong's palace would completely crush Beihai, crush it and swallow it. Zhou State would adapt to it. Because in that state, Emperor Dong's palace would be very similar to Beihai. It would look like Beihai had changed its surname from Wang to Li, and moved from Beihai to Tianan. Everything would come naturally. When Her Highness Qin Weibai made this plan, it was not because she couldn't think of a better way to imitate Beihai. On the contrary, I think she wanted to naturally replace you. Lin Shi said slowly. Wild ambition. Wild ambition. Wang Xingxiao's face was livid. I haven't finished yet. Lin Shi's voice was disturbing. This is only a part of Zhou State. It turns out that the Flourishing Age Fund has also invested a lot overseas in recent years. They are also secret investments, which means that Emperor Dong's palace also hides a very powerful force overseas. The so-called Flourishing Age Fund is like an iceberg on the sea. What everyone sees is just the tip of the iceberg. Wang Xingxiao looked down at the documents on the screen. Just opening a few folders, his face had become completely gloomy. Emperor Dong's palace is not the only one with worse news. Lin Shi said slowly, "We can't underestimate Jiang Shangyu." A piercingly cold, killing intent flashed in his eyes. This could even be said to be one of his main tasks here. But this task was not a request of the War God Realm, but a clear request of the War God Realm by the space-time corridor. Anything that seemed inconceivable and incomprehensible was just because the level was not high enough. From the perspective of the War God Realm and the space-time corridor, they could use the most scientific way to explain Qin Weibai's rebirth, space-time travel and parallel universe. They knew very well why Qin Weibai's rebirth. But Jiang Shangyu's rebirth was an unexpected variable. Jiang Shangyu had the possibility of being reborn. Everyone had the possibility of being reborn. However, the probability, even if theoretically explained, was so small that it almost didn't exist. Even if this small and negligible probability really happened to Jiang Shangyu shouldn't have appeared here. He should have appeared in the miracle city that belonged to the God of War's realm and was separated by the God of War. It was obviously unusual for him to appear here. But the space-time corridor had always been very cautious about this matter and did not probe too much. This now became Lin Shi's task. How to investigate something without intense probing was the most difficult. The simplest way that Lin Shi could think of was to kill Jiang Shangyu directly. But if Jiang Shangyu really had something worth probing, then it was obviously not easy to kill him. The cooperation between Jiang Shangyu and Li Guangtu is unlikely to be broken up at this stage. If your sword energy coat gathers again, you are currently stronger than either of them. But if they join forces, it will also be extremely troublesome for you. The Purgatory of Heaven capital is very strong, so is the Knights Templars. Moreover, there seems to be an interesting old guy in the Holy Land. If they stand together, they can still build a very terrifying joint force. Compared with the joint forces, Beihai does not have much advantage, but at least it is not a disadvantage, so. Emperor Dong's palace, the Wang family of Beihai, joint forces. You His Majesty Li Tianlong Jiang Shangyu. You will be the focus of the dark world. I can't say that the Wang family of Beihai will inevitably be destroyed, but if you want to deal with the current situation, your pressure will undoubtedly be greater. You need my help. I need a clear position. This is the basis of our cooperation. Three-party struggle for hegemony. Sounds a bit like the romance of the Three Kingdoms. Who can defeat the heroes in the world? Tao Lu? The apostle who had been learning about all aspects of information laughed. A son should be like Sun Zhongmo. Lin Shi looked at Wang Xingxiao with a smile. What do you think? Wang Xingxiao did not. He just felt the pressure. The incomparably huge pressure once again completely enveloped his whole body. How do you want to cooperate? Wang Xingxiao asked slowly after a long silence. After a pause, he changed his approach. Or what do you need? Everything. It was logical and expected. Lin Shi smiled and made a request that seemed to be demanding an exorbitant price. I need everything: money, talents, intelligence, connections, everything. I need them. Wang Xingxiao looked at Lin Shi expressionlessly. The apostle kindly reminded him, the Wang family of Beihai seems to have a good army on the Afrocontinent. Wang Xingxiao's facial muscles suddenly twitched. The Divine Martial Army. This was a super army that had been passed down in Beihai for hundreds of years. It had always been one of the most powerful forces on the Afrocontinent. Its history even predated the history of Beihai province. It was an army of more than 400,000 soldiers. Perhaps the overall quality of the Divine Martial Army was not as good as that of the Beihai Corps and the Border Control Corps, but this kind of super large army could be said to be a trump card anywhere. Beihai had always attached great importance to the Divine Martial Army. For many years, whether it was armaments, logistics, or personnel treatment, they were all very top-notch. Such a super-large integrated army was synonymous with invincibility on the Afrocontinent. Yes. Lin Shi nodded and said, that army is good. You want the Divine Martial Army? The question in Wang Xingxiao's tone was extremely strong. Yes and no. Lin Shi said flatly, we want the Divine Martial Army, but it's not just the Divine Martial Army. A Divine Martial Army and more. Do we have to give you half of Beihai before we are satisfied? Wang Xingxiao was so angry that he laughed. What about you? What can you give Beihai? Saint closed the book and looked at Wang Xingxiao. We can help you treat your father Wang Tianzong. Chapter 1060. Heal Wang Tianzong. For the Wang family of Beihai, just a few simple words contained a fatal attraction. However, Wang Xingxiao seemed to have experienced too many accidents today, so even if he heard that the other party could help him heal his father, his expression didn't change much. He just raised his eyelids and glanced at Lin Shi. Lin Shi calmly changed Saint's statement and said with a smile, "To be exact, we can help you heal your father, Wang Tianzong." Heal. These were two completely different concepts. Wang Xingxiao's body finally moved. He looked at Lin Shi and asked, "How long do you need?" "In 5 years at least and 10 years at most, we can guarantee that the Sword Emperor's injury will be completely healed." Lin Shi's voice was clear and light, but it was with absolute confidence. In fact, it was not difficult to heal Wang Tianzong, but it was definitely not easy either. Wang Tianzong's injury was not the most important thing. Although his injury seemed to be very serious, it was not a problem in the eyes of Saint. Wang Tianzong's biggest problem was the reason for his injury. The video of the Eternal Sword over Mormons could still be found in some secret channels. Lin Shi had watched that sword countless times. How amazing that sword was. Lin Shi couldn't describe it in words. It was indeed a sword, but it was equivalent to the double damage of King Guard's sword energy and the real brand. If he treated it correctly with authority, the authority of that sword had even exceeded the 5th level. For Miracle City, this was absolutely an unprecedented sword, a peak that could not be surpassed. Even if his father came here in person and tried his best, it would probably be the same. Saint could heal Wang Tianzong's internal and external injuries, but he needed a certain amount of time to carefully repair the damage caused by the real brand. Of course, this time would not be as long as 5 to 10 years. Seriously, if Saint tried his best to help Wang Tianzong stand up again, it would only take about 8 to 10 months, no more than a year at most. 5 to 10 years. This was the time that Lin Shi needed and also the time that Lin Shi speculated that Li Tianlan needed. Not to mention Li Tianlan, the majesty that Li Tianlan represented had always been one of the most respected people in Lin Shi's life. He was also the most respected person in his father, even his grandfather, and even the entire human clan. Everyone. No one wanted to be his enemy. There was no one. Lin Shi wanted to sharpen himself with the help of His Majesty's recovery, so he had no intention of making trouble for His Majesty. In Lin Shi's estimation, with Li Tianlan's current state, it would take him about 5 to 10 years to continue to break through to the next step, and then it would take him about 10 years to reach the perfect state that everyone expected and return smoothly. At that time, it was entirely possible to cure Wang Tianzong. "I know what you're thinking," Lin Shi said calmly, "but your idea is wrong. There are some documents about the Wang family of Beihai in the notebook in your hand, including the plan for the new generation of immortality that we just found. The direction of this plan is correct, but in our opinion, even if you can still avoid detours in the following time, it will take at least nearly 40 years to succeed. Remember, I'm only talking about the success of the new generation of eternal life. I can tell you responsibly that the new generation of eternal life cannot completely solve the Sword Emperor's problem. It can only solve a part of it because your current research lacks the most crucial truth. Based on the progress of your research, you might not even be able to come into contact with this point in the endless years to come." Wang Xingxiao asked confusedly. Lin Shi stopped explaining. "This is not a problem you should care about," he said softly. "What you should care about now is the situation of the Wang family of Beihai. I don't know how much you know about Her Highness Qin Weibai. I can only say that the Her Highness everyone knows is not the one accompanying His Majesty Li Tianlan now. Although that one can't be said to be fake, the real Her Highness is now recuperating in the European land. Her state is very strange. She is in a state where she can be saved but can't be saved. And there are some things that even Xianyuan Wushang can't say. You can imagine what the situation of Beihai will be when His Majesty knows the truth. His Majesty doesn't know for now, but it doesn't mean that he won't know in the future. At least Jiang Shangyu is very likely to tell him." Wang Xingxiao was silent. Of course he knew about Qin Weibai. It was Summer Solstice who told him. "You are no match for His Majesty, so you need us. It happens that we also need the support of Beihai. I can help you resist some of the pressure and even help you cure the Sword Emperor." What are you hesitating about? Wang Xingxiao felt a little uncomfortable in his heart. Straight, it was not until he heard Lin Shi's words again that he understood what was wrong. The Sword Emperor of Zhongzhou State, Wang Tianzong. From beginning to end, the three people in front of him seemed to be very polite when they mentioned his father, calling him the Sword Emperor, but it was just pure politeness without any respect. Instead, when it came to Li Tianlan, no matter who the three of them were, when they mentioned Li Tianlan, they would instinctively call him Your Majesty. Wang Xingxiao gritted his teeth subconsciously. Compared with the 400,000 troops of the Divine Martial Army or the Sword Emperor, which one is more important in your heart? Lin Shi asked. Wang Xingxiao took a deep breath and didn't speak for a while. As a son, he would choose the latter without hesitation. But as the patriarch of the Wang family of Beihai, how could he answer this question? And I don't think you have any other choice now. Lin Shi continued. Beihai is far from the end of the road. Wang Xingxiao's face was cold. That's true. But if it really comes to that, our cooperation will be meaningless. Lin Shi nodded and said. Wang Xingxiao continued to be silent. After a long time he suddenly asked, You said that you are all from the Lin clan? Lin Shi froze and nodded. Sort of. Wang Xingxiao questioned. I am a direct descendant of the Lin clan, and they are the retainers of the Lin clan. It's not wrong to say that we are from the Lin clan, but my seniority in the Lin clan seems to be a little high. Lin Shi hesitated as if he didn't know how to express it. The god of war was the origin of the Lin clan and the god of war's realm. As the son of the god of war, his seniority, he shook his head in confusion. The Divine Martial Army. Wang Xingxiao took a deep look at Lin Shi. I can give it to you, but I have a request. Say it. Lin Shi said calmly. I need to know your origins, your specific abilities and your specific goals. We can cooperate and Beihai can support you, but you must show enough sincerity. You can let me rest assured of your sincerity in cooperating with you. Wang Xingxiao said seriously. Chapter 1061. The off-road vehicle went all the way forward. The atmosphere in the car was silent. Lin Shi, the apostle and saint were all silent and did not say a word. Wang Xingxiao looked at them and his eyes gradually became cold. I think. His voice was slow and a little cold. This is not an excessive request. His request was indeed not excessive, and it could even be said to be the most basic request. Wang Xingxiao cooperated with them in many ways. Lin Shi chose to make an exorbitant demand. He asked for more than 400,000 elite troops of the Divine Martial Army, and more than that he also asked for money and resources. Such a price was just to support an ally. Even for the Wang family of Beihai, it was quite a crazy thing. A Divine Martial Army represented at least a quarter of the military strength of the Wang family of Beihai. Even a fool knew what it meant. No superpower needed to use its own resources or even spend a lot of money to support an ally. Wang Xingxiao could give them these things, because he valued the abilities of the three people. Lin Shi had already shown his strength the moment he pulled him from Tiannan to Africa. The apostle's method of making transformers was also enough to stun people. As a doctor, Saint could be called a miracle-working doctor in this era. From Tiannan to West Africa in an instant, this was a technology that surpassed countless years of this era, and even the people of this era had never thought about it. And the quantum network that was currently in the state of scientific fantasy, and so on. The Wang family of Beihai needed these technologies, which was also what Wang Xingxiao valued the most. Otherwise, it would be meaningless to cooperate with these three people. Since he valued these technologies and abilities, Wang Xingxiao naturally needed to further understand them in detail to reconfirm their value. As allies, Wang Xingxiao also needed to know where they came from and what they were going to do, and they didn't need to hide it. If they were not willing to disclose these things, then how much sincerity did they have in this so-called cooperation? This is really not an excessive request. Lin Shi was silent for a while and said slowly. So? Wang Xingxiao asked. But we can't say too much. Lin Shi said slowly, thinking, and suddenly asked, Is there any war palace on Mount Dibing now? Wang Xingxiao was stunned. War palace. He was naturally familiar with this term. Anyone who knew the history of the Wang family of Beihai was familiar with it. That was the most glorious history of the Wang family of Beihai. It was also the first part of history. Beihai had a thriving population. In its hundreds of years of history, There was basically no situation in which the younger generation was alone. Even the lineal patriarchs mostly had brothers and sisters, such as Wang Xingxiao and Wang Yuetong of this generation. For example, Wang Tianzong and Wang Xiaoyao of the previous generation. When Wang Yuetong was in Beihai, she was jokingly called the little princess of Beihai. Before Wang Tianzong fell down, Wang Xiaoyao, who seemed to be ignorant and cynical most of the time, was called King Xiaoyao of Beihai. Perhaps this was a joke, but no one would deny the nobility of their status. There were many generations of princes and princesses in the history of the North Sea, and they all made important contributions to the development of the North Sea. As for the War Palace, this was the residence of the most important lord in Beihai so far in Mount Dibing. He was a lord recognized by people in several eras in the Dark World. In the hearts of Beihai people, he was a great man who could be described as great. He was the god of war recognized by everyone. He was the only name on Mount Dibing, Mount Xiaoxiang, that could be ranked with the ancestor who founded Beihai province. That was the early days of Beihai. He and the ancestor of Beihai pushed Beihai to the peak of the Dark World. After the ancestor of Beihai died, he alone guarded the Wang family of Beihai for nearly 100 years. In his era, the Wang family of Beihai, which was carried by him alone, was not afraid of any opponent, any force, any country. That was the era when Beihai was truly invincible. The War Palace belonged to the god of war of the Wang family of Beihai, the god of war Lin Xianyuan. He was also the ancestor of the Lin clan and the founder of Xuanyuantai of the Li family. In the history of the Wang family of Beihai, he was the only Wang with a different surname. For hundreds of years, there was no second god of war in the Wang family of Beihai. But the War Palace, which had always stood side by side with the Emperor Palace, had always stood on Mount Dibing. In the wind and rain, the Wang family of Beihai would carefully protect any damage as soon as possible, as if guarding the most important treasure. His name was engraved on stone, a formidable person, ranked with the ancestors of Beihai. As long as the history of Beihai was talked about, the patriarchs of Beihai would not hesitate to praise the glory of the god of war. His spirit tablet was placed in the ancestral hall of the Wang family of Beihai and worshipped day and night. His name in Beihai province had almost become a legend that belonged to the people of Beihai. But, even when Beihai and the Lin clan gradually drifted apart and became enemies with the Li family, the glory of this name had never been covered. Wang Xingxiao's eyes dimmed slightly, and his whole body showed a touch of undisguised bitterness. But the War Palace was gone. It had always existed until more than 2 years ago. But now, the entire Mount Dibing was gone. The War Palace and the Emperor Palace were all gone. Wang Xingxiao was silent for a long time before he said softly, "It's still there. There may be some changes, but the real War Palace, the real god of war, has always been in the hearts of everyone in Beihai." Lin Shi smiled. His eyes seemed to soften for a moment and his voice was slightly relaxed. "I agree. The War Palace is also in our hearts. It's hard for me to explain in detail to you when you ask about our origin, but I can tell you that we are from the god of war realm." Wang Xingxiao narrowed his eyes, hesitated and asked, "The god of war realm?" Lin Shi said yes. "I've never heard of the name of this force." Wang Xingxiao paused and suddenly said, "A few years ago, Jiang Shangyu also set up an organization called 3,000 Realms." 3,000 Realms? A few years ago? Lin Shi's eyes suddenly flashed with an incomparably sharp, killing intent. About 4 years ago? At that time he was still studying in the Deep Sea Academy. Wang Xingxiao replied. 3,000 Realms. 3,000 Realms. Lin Shi murmured the word and his voice became colder and colder. "It's really a name full of the style of the Shadow Camp." "What?" Wang Xingxiao asked again. "Nothing." Lin Shi gradually restrained his killing intent, and he shook his head slightly.